Welcome to Game of Theories. Today's adventure. What if Jon Snow and Arya Stark were reborn before Robert arrived at Winterfell? If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The bed that should not have been his. The cold went out of the world between one heartbeat and no heartbeat. Snow on his lips, snow in his eyes. The white had taken his shield arm above the elbow and was working on the rest of him. And there had been a roaring sound in his head that he had taken at first for the wind, and then for a horn, and then for nothing at all. He had closed his eyes on a white field. He opened them on a brown ceiling. The beams were familiar. He did not move. The mattress under him was straw. The pillow under his head was wool, stuffed too soft by someone who had loved him once. There was a candle in a clay dish on the chest by the wall, burned down by half, and a flame on it. Someone had lit it. Someone who knew he was afraid of the dark when he was a boy. He had not been afraid of the dark when he was a boy. He had only been a boy who had not yet seen the dark properly. He listened. A voice in the corridor outside. A woman's voice, low and singing. Old Nan, in the long quaver she used for the small ones. He had not heard that voice since. He could not remember since. He had not allowed himself to remember since. He looked at his hand on the blanket. It was a hand he had not had for a long time. The fingers were thin and unscarred. The knuckles had no notches. The nail of the thumb had not been split and was a clean half-moon. He turned the hand over. The palm was unmarked. There was no white line across it where Longclaw had bitten him in the practice yard when he was 17. There was no burn from the brazier in the Lord Commander's solar. There was nothing. He sat up. The room moved with him in the wrong proportions. The chest was closer than it should have been. The window was lower. The bedposts came to his shoulder rather than his hip. He turned his feet over the side of the bed, and they touched the floorboards earlier than his memory allowed, and he put his palms flat on the wood and waited until his stomach stopped pretending it had a use for itself. He stood. The door was the door. The latch was the latch. The hinge made the same small protest it always had. He did not go through. He sat back down on the bed. He waited. He had died. He kept track of the order of those words. He had died. He remembered the dying. He remembered the cold and the white field, and the way a man's voice he had loved had been calling his name from too far away to matter. He remembered the white's hands. He remembered before that, lying on a stone table in a tower in Castle Black with a smell of burning in his beard and a woman in red bending over him. He remembered before that, a knife in his belly and a man named Ollie. He remembered before that, a girl on a dragon. He remembered before that, a bay he had named after no one and a wolf with a missing eye. He remembered before that. He remembered, in fact, more than he wanted to remember and in better order than he had any business with. And his head was very clear, and his hands were very thin, and the candle in the clay dish had not burned down any further while he had been counting. He looked at the candle. He looked at the door. He stood up again and crossed the floor and took the small belt knife from the peg on the wall. His belt knife. The one he had lost in the courtyard the summer he turned 15 and had never found, and laid the edge across the meat of his thumb and pressed. It hurt. The blood was red and it ran the wrong direction down his wrist because his hand was at the wrong angle, and he watched it for a count of 5 and then sucked at the cut, and the taste was iron and clean and there was no other smell in it. He set the knife back on the peg. He breathed out. He sat down on the chest under the window. He did not let himself say the year. He did not let himself name his age. He did not let himself think the words. He knew them. He kept them where he could find them and not where they could find him. The light through the shutter was thin and white. Morning. Late morning by the angle of it. He could hear very faintly the practice yard, wooden swords. A boy laughing Rob. A boy crowing over him, Theon. A man's voice, Sir Roderick, telling them both to keep their elbows in. He pulled on a tunic from the chest. It was loose on his shoulders, the way a tunic is loose on a boy who has not yet finished his shoulders. He laced it. His fingers were faster than they should have been at the lacing because they had laced harder leather in worse weather, and there was a habit in the fingers that did not belong to 14. He let himself, for one count, be afraid. Then he opened the door and went out. In the corridor, old Nan was sitting on her stool with a basket of carded wool and a little girl at her feet. The girl had hair the wrong color for a Stark and a face that was almost, but not quite, his sister's. Cousin, perhaps. He did not stop to look. He nodded to old Nan, and she said his name, and he said hers, and his voice was a boy's voice, and that was the worst of the morning so far. He went down. In the hall the trestles were still up from the breakfast, and a girl in a kitchen apron was clearing them. He took an apple from the bowl by the salt cellar and bit it. It was an apple that tasted like an apple. He took the second bite slower than the first. His teeth were a boy's teeth, and they had no chip in the back one, and the apple was a sour summer apple from a barrel that had not yet been emptied, and he ate it because he was hungry, and because hunger was a useful proof. He went out into the yard. The cold caught him at the door. Not the cold of north of the wall, the cold of Winterfell in early autumn. A clean cold. A cold a man could wear. Robb was in the middle of the yard with a wooden sword and a flushed face, and Theon at his shoulder, twirling another wooden sword and grinning at no one in particular. Sir Roderick was on the bench by the post, his whiskers neat, his hands folded. Bran was on the rail of the gallery above, swinging his feet, watching with the close attention he gave to anything that had a sword in it. There was no Rickon in the yard. Rickon would be in the kitchens with the bread because Rickon was three. He let that fact settle. "Snow," said Theon, "come down here. Robb's got it in his head he can take me on a left-foot pass, and I want a witness." He went down the steps slowly. He did not let his feet drop too softly because soft feet on stone are a thing a man learns who has stalked something. He let his weight come down through his heel like a boy. He took the practice sword Robb tossed him. The grip was wrong. It had been a long time since he had held a thing this short. He turned it twice in his hand. "You're rusty," said Theon, pleased. "I am," he said. Robb laughed and came at him. It was a terrible bout. He pulled every cut. He moved his feet at half the pace they wanted to move. He took 2 clean taps on the ribs from Robb, because Robb's reach was good and Robb's footwork was clean for a boy of 14. And because the body he was wearing did not have, in its sinews, the things he had taught it later, would teach it later, would have to teach it again. He let Robb hit him, and Robb's face went bright with the joy of it, and Theon laughed and clapped. Sir Roderick watched. He marked the watching. He pulled his next cut harder than he had pulled the last, into the line he would have taken if his arm had been the arm he was used to, and then dragged it short on purpose, and Sir Roderick's whiskers moved in a way that he chose not to read. "Match," Sir Roderick said. "Sit, Snow. You're slow this morning." "I slept poorly," he said. He sat on the bench. He let Robb and Theon fall to with each other. He watched them with the eye of a man who has trained boys who later died, and he made himself stop watching that way. He looked up. Bran was looking back at him from the gallery rail. Bran had the face of a child who is interested in a thing and does not yet know that the thing is interesting because it is wrong. Bran's eyes did not have in them anything more than 9 years of seeing. Not yet. He nodded to Bran. Bran waved. He went back inside. The morning meal had been put up, but the family table at the end of the hall still held some of its company. Catelyn at the Lord's seat. Ned would be in the godswood at this hour, or in the yard at the smithy, or at the Maester's tower. Catelyn would be holding the keep. Sansa at her right, a piece of embroidery in her lap. ARYA at her left, in a dress that did not fit her and a face that did not want to be in the dress. He took the bench beside Bran's empty place. Bran was in the yard above the yard and reached for the bread. "You came in late," Catelyn said, not looking up. "Lady Stark," he said. He kept his voice the boy's voice. "I beg your pardon." She did not answer. She did not need to. He cut the bread. He did not look at ARYA. He had taken 3 bites when the spoon came across the table. It came from ARYA's hand toward Sansa's shoulder. It was thrown the way a child throws a spoon, but not the way a child throws a spoon. The wrist was rotated. The elbow stayed in. The release was at the right point. There was a small flat sound to the throw, like an exhalation. Sansa squeaked and put her hand up too late. His hand was already there. The spoon hit his palm a finger's breadth before Sansa's shoulder. It was bone, the spoon. It would have left a bruise. He had caught it without thinking because the throw had had the shape of a knife in it, and his body had answered. He set the spoon down on the table. "ARYA," Catelyn said, sharp. ARYA did not look at her mother. ARYA looked at him. The look lasted no longer than the second before a falling thing reaches a floor. She looked away first. "I'm sorry, Sansa," ARYA said in the voice of a girl of 9 who is not sorry. "It slipped." "It did not slip," said Sansa. "It slipped." "ARYA," said Catelyn again, less sharp. "Apologize." "I did." He went on cutting his bread. He did not look at ARYA. He did not look at her for the rest of the meal. He marked her not looking at him. When she rose to leave the hall, when she ducked under Catelyn's hand and skipped on her right foot the way a child skips, with the wrong foot lifted, the way a child skips who is trying very hard to remember how a child skips, he watched her go. He watched the way her left hip moved when her right foot came up. He watched the way she did not put her weight on the ball of her left foot, but on the outside edge of it. The outside edge of the left foot is where a small girl puts her weight when she does not want to make any noise. He went back to his bread. He ate 3 more bites. He drank a swallow of small beer. He thanked Lady Stark, who did not answer, and he left the hall. He went to the godswood. The leaves of the heart tree were as red as he had remembered them. The face of the tree was the face he had been afraid of when he was very small and had loved when he was less small, and had bled in front of, when he was older than any of the men of this castle now thought he was. He did not kneel. He had stopped kneeling to it a long time ago in a place a long way north. He stood in front of the carved eyes, and he set his hand on the bark. The bark was warm. The bark of a weirwood is always warmer than the bark of any tree of the south. He had forgotten that. He kept his hand there. He did not pray. He had nothing to pray. He thought of the spoon. He thought of the foot. The outside edge of the left foot. He thought of his sister, who at 9 had been a kicker and a thrower and a girl who put her weight down like a girl of 9. He thought of his sister, who at older had moved like a knife. He thought of a coin she had carried in her shoe. He had never seen the coin himself. She had told him about it once in a hall in the Twins on a night that had ended badly for everyone, the way nights had a habit of ending. He thought of a man named the Kindly Man. He took his hand off the bark. He turned. His father was standing at the edge of the godswood behind him, 2 paces back. Ned had not made a sound coming. Ned never made a sound coming. Ned was wearing a brown wool jerkin and his hair was loose, and his face was the face of his father in a year his father had been alive. He looked at his father. His father looked at him. "Jon," Ned said. "Father." Ned came forward to stand beside him at the tree. Ned set his own hand on the bark in the place where Jon's hand had been. Ned did not look at him. Ned looked at the carved face. "You were not at the morning meal until late," Ned said. "I slept poorly. You sleep poorly often of late." "I dreamed," he said. Ned waited. Jon did not say what he had dreamed. The wind moved through the red leaves. The leaves had the dark red of stained cloth that has been washed many times. He had been told once by a man in a black cloak that the weirwood leaves were red because they remembered. "What did you dream?" Ned asked after a little while. "A thing I do not yet understand," he said. He kept his voice even. He did not look at his father. "When I understand it, I will tell you." Ned did not press. Ned did not press because Ned was Ned. Ned would press later when he had decided he had a right to. Ned had not yet decided he had a right to. They stood for a while in the godswood, two pairs of hands on a tree, a boy and a man by the count of the eyes of the keep. A man and a man by the count of any other thing. "You are slow in the yard this morning," Ned said. "I am." "You will not be tomorrow." "No." Ned took his hand off the bark. "Come and see me in my solar after the noon meal," Ned said. "I have a thing I want to ask you." "Yes, father." Ned went. He stood under the heart tree a while longer. He counted in his head 11 days. Jon Arryn was already dead. Jon Arryn had been dead for some weeks. The raven had come and Ned had read it, and the household had not yet been told because the household did not need to be told until the household had a use for the telling. The raven sat in a drawer in Ned's solar with a black seal on it. And the man who had killed Jon Arryn was riding north on the King's Road at the head of a column of 200 horse and 7 wheelhouses. And the woman who had ordered the killing was riding with him. And her children were riding with her, and her brother, the one she lay with, was riding at her stirrup. They were 11 days out. He had 11 days to keep his father out of a chair that had killed every man who had sat in it. He had 11 days to keep his brother off a tower his brother had no business climbing. He had 11 days to make a girl who had thrown a spoon like a knife trust him enough to tell him whether she remembered, also, the way the cold goes out of the world. He took his hand off the heart tree. He went back to the keep. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The coin in the shoe she had drowned. That was the order of it. She had drowned in the cistern under the temple, with the water in her nose and the small lamp blurring up at her from below the surface, and the kind hand that had pushed her under not unkind, because the kindness had never been the question. The many-faced God did not lend his face for nothing. She had used a face he had not given her to use. She had killed a man she had not been told to kill. He had been a man she had needed dead. The temple had not cared. She had drowned. And now her arm was warm under a blanket, and there was a small body in the small bed that was hers, and the bed was the bed in the gallery room above the brewhouse, the one that smelled of barley in the autumn. The smell was in her nose, her own nose. She wiggled her toes. There were toes. She counted them by touch. There were 10. She did not sit up at once. She put her hand to her face. Her cheek was where her cheek had been. Her ear was where her ear had been. Her chin was the small chin she had hated when she was a child. The chin she had been wearing when she died had not been hers. The face she had been wearing when she died had not been hers either, and she had not minded. A girl is what she does, the kindly man had said, and a girl does not need a face of her own. The kindly man had been wrong about a great many things. She put her hand into her hair. Her hair was thick and tangled. It had not been brushed by anyone who liked it. There was a knot at the back. She worked her finger into the knot and pulled it apart, and the small pain was a sweet pain because the scalp under the knot was hers. She sat up. The room was the gallery room. The window was the window. The chest at the end of the bed was the chest with the broken corner where she had kicked it once, because Sansa had said something about a horse. The chest. She set her bare foot on the cold floorboards, and the boards were cold, and the cold was the cold of Winterfell in autumn, and she let her foot stay on the cold board until the cold stopped surprising her. She was 9. She knew the count without counting. She had been 9 the morning the king's banners came up the King's Road. She had been 9 when her father had not yet told her she could not have a sword. She had been 9 when a man had not yet died at the foot of a stair in the Red Keep, because she had not yet been hiding under the stair. She had been 9. The window was open a finger. Outside the yard. Outside voices. Outside the boy who had been her brother. She did not let herself think his name. She dressed. The dress had been folded by someone who folded a dress well, which meant Septa Mordain or one of her women. The dress was a wool dress in a stark gray that was too dark for autumn. She put it on and laced the front, and the laces had been retied by old Nan in the way old Nan retied a thing without saying anything to anyone, so that a girl could find them done in the morning and not have to be told they had been wrong. She did not put on the stockings. She did not put on the boots yet, either. She went to the kitchens. The kitchen at this hour was the heel of the night baking and the head of the morning. Gage was at the great hearth. The smell was cardamom bread and pork fat, and the smoke of pine kindling. A scullery girl she did not know, she did. She remembered the girl, she would not name the girl. She would have known the girl's name when she was younger and had not yet been 30 other people, was scrubbing a great iron pot. She slid along the wall. She kept her left hip behind a beam. She came to the salt barrel and she put her hand inside the salt barrel and below the salt, where the wooden block was, she dragged a copper she had hidden there last winter and lifted it out and dropped it into her palm. She did not stop moving. She did not look at Gage. Gage did not look at her. The copper was an old copper. Old enough she had forgotten putting it there when she had been 9 the first time, and she had wondered at 13 how a copper had come to be there at all. She did not think about that. She left the kitchen by the side door and crossed the kitchen yard and ducked under the gallery and came out by the brewhouse and sat down on the stack of empty barrels and pulled on her stockings and her boots. She wound the laces in 2 crosses, the way Septa Mordain liked. She tied them in the front, a small bow. Then she lifted her right foot and she undid the lace at the heel, and she slid the copper under the felt liner of the boot and put the boot on again, and she tied the lace. The copper would shift a little when she walked. It would warm against her in step. It would not be heard. It would not be seen. It would not be searched for. She stood up. She walked into the yard. He was in the yard. She watched him from the gallery rail with her chin on her wrist and her wrist on the rail and the rail cold against her elbow. She was being a child. She made sure of it. She kicked her left foot in a small, useless way against the post. Children kick. She had stopped kicking when she had been a man in a black cloak in the courtyard of Castle Black, but she remembered how to kick. He had a wooden sword. He held it wrong. He held it as wrong as a boy of 14 holds a wooden sword, except that he held it as wrong on purpose. She watched the way his thumb did not sit on top of the grip. She watched the way his elbow did not lift past his shoulder. She watched the way he pulled his cut at the moment when the cut should have driven through. He was being slow. He was being slow because he had a body that could not yet be fast. And because Sir Roderick was on the bench and Sir Roderick knew at a glance the difference between a boy who was slow and a boy who was pulling. Rob came at him with a left foot pass. He stepped wrong. He stepped wrong like a boy. The boy's wrong. The wrong that comes of feet too long for the legs that hold them up. He took the cut on the ribs and he made a small noise and he laughed. She saw the laugh. The laugh was a laugh. It was. But the laugh had been laid down on top of something else, and the something else was a man's laugh, dry. And the dry laugh was the laugh of a man who has stood in his own grave more than once and has stopped, at some point, being surprised about it. She knew that laugh. She had heard that laugh from a man she had ridden out of the Twins with, on a horse he had stolen, who had been her brother by blood but not by anything else for a while now, and had become, at the end, the only person in the world she would still cross the narrow sea for. She did not let her face move. She took her chin off her wrist. She turned. She skipped on her right foot, left foot up, weight on the outside of the right, and she went down the gallery stair. Children skip. Children skip badly. She skipped badly. She did not look at him in the yard. She went to the morning meal. In the hall she sat where she had sat. She knew where she had sat. Catelyn was at the Lord's seat, and Sansa was at Catelyn's right, and the place at Catelyn's left was the place a girl of 9 sits when her mother does not want her wandering. She sat. She put her napkin in her lap because Septa Mordane was 3 benches down with her eye on her. She did not look at the door. He came in late. She let him come in late. She let him sit on the bench by Bran's empty place and reach for the bread. She let him cut it. She let him eat 3 bites of it. She let her own bread sit because she was not eating yet. She took up her spoon. She had a wooden spoon and a bone spoon. Septa Mordane had told her since she was 4 that little ladies did not eat with bone spoons. She used the bone spoon on principle. She turned it in her hand. She set it down. She picked it up. She threw it. She threw it at her sister's shoulder. She threw it because if he was who she thought he was, he would catch it. And he would catch it the wrong way. And the wrong way would be the right way. And she would know. He caught it. He caught it a finger's breadth from Sansa's shoulder. He caught it with the palm and the thumb wrapped, the way a man catches a thrown knife when he does not want the edge in his hand. He set the spoon on the table. His eyes did not come up. Hers did. She looked at him across the trestle for the length of a beat, no more, and she did not let her face do anything to her face that any of the other people in the hall had not seen a girl of 9 do 1,000 times. She made her mouth small and stubborn. She made her chin lift. She looked at the spoon. She did not look at him again. "I'm sorry, Sansa," she said. "It slipped." "It did not slip. It slipped." "Arya," said her mother, "apologize." "I did." She ate the rest of her morning meal without looking up. She did not look at him again. She did not have to. The godswood at the noon hour was empty except for the wind in the leaves. She had come early. She had come early because if he came at all, he would come, and if he came, he would not come at the moment he had told her. He had not told her, neither had she told him. Neither had spoken a word that anyone in the hall had heard. But he would come, and he would come when he came. By the long way around the inner wall and not by the short way past the rookery. She sat on the low stone bench at the edge of the pool. The pool was black, the way the pool was always black. The fish in the pool were old fish. She did not remember the fish from before. They had been fish then and they were fish now. She had her boot off. She had the copper in her palm. She turned the copper over and over. She heard him on the path. He came from the long way. He came without sound. He came without sound the way a man comes without sound who has stalked things that do not stalk back if they do not have to. He stopped at the edge of the clearing. He did not step into the clearing. She did not look up. "Sit," she said. He sat. He sat on the other end of the bench. He did not sit close. He left 2 handspans between them. She put the copper back in her boot. She drew the lace tight. She set the boot down. She did not put it on yet. "Say a name," she said. "Yours." "Mine first." "Arya, my horse." "You did not have a horse at 9. Later. Later you stole a great many. Pick one. The one I rode out of the Riverlands on. What was his name?" "He did not have a name. You did not give names to horses you stole because if you named them they would die." "All right." She did not speak for a count. "Say a name," she said. "Whose?" "Mine." "Cat of the Canals." "Another." "Beth." "Another." "Salty." "That will do." "Yours now," he said. "Yours." "Mine." She lifted her chin. "You died north of the wall," she said. "On the second ranging after you came back, you took the rear guard. They walked over you. I was not there. I heard about it later, from a man in a tavern in Pentos who was lying about most of it, but not about the rear guard. Yes. I did not believe him. You did not have to. Now you say one. You died in Bravos. I did. They did not tell me. I worked it out. There was a name that stopped getting brought to me. I knew the name. Yes. He was looking at the pool. He was not looking at her. He was being kind. She did not need the kindness, but she let him be kind. "Say his name," she said. "Whose?" "Yours. The one you were promised by." The one you bent your knee for, Mormont, the first or the second, both in the end. All right, she was quiet. There is a thing I have not said, he said. Say it. Your name on the list. What list? The list you used to say in the dark when you were younger. She did not answer. He did not press, Joffrey, she said after a while. The mountain, Dunson, Polliver, Raff the Sweetling, the Tickler. The Hound, I took him off in the end or near enough. Circe, ill in pain. Mur in Trant, I crossed him off in the city of canals. Beric Dendarian, Thoros of Mur, Walder Frey. Crossed off, I know. She turned to him. He turned to her. There was a count, a long count in which she did not say anything to him and he did not say anything to her. There was a count in which she let her face do the thing she had not let it do in the hall. She did not look away from his face while the count went, and his face was a face she had loved. You are old, she said. So are you. You are not as old as you think. I am older than my father by some measures. Yes, so am I. Yes, she breathed out. ARYA, he said. JON. The two names sat in the godswood between them. What do we do? She said. That depends on what you remember. I remember everything. Then we have work. He did not look away. Tell me what you've got, he said. We have 11 days. Less. The Kingsroad column will make the Long Lake by tomorrow. They will be at the gate 8 days after that. The first thing we have is whether he lives, and what we do with him alive, and what we do with the Queen, and what we do with the dagger that is going to be drawn on Bran in the broken tower. She looked at her boot on the bench. She picked it up. We do not start with the king, she said. We start with father. Yes, he cannot go south. No, he will not be told he cannot go south. No, he has to want not to go south. Yes. I do not know how to do that. I do. You do. I will tell him a true thing he cannot ignore. He will look at me. He will believe me, or he will not. Either way, he will not go south as the same man. What true thing? He looked at the heart tree. The face on the heart tree was the face it had always been. He did not flinch from it. I will tell him I am his sister's son, he said. She did not move. He will believe you, she said. Yes. He will believe you because mother saw him at the heart tree once when she was carrying me and he was crying, and he never cried where she could see him after that. He will believe you because father does not lie to himself for very long when he is shown a thing he cannot lie about. He will believe you because he loved your mother. He will believe you because you will not ask him to believe anything else first. Yes, he will be angry. He will. Not at you. At Lyanna, at Robert, at himself for not telling you, at the gods, at the Maester for never giving him the right book. Yes, she put the boot on. She drew the lace tight. She tied the bow at the front. She tucked the ends in. All right, she said. Father first, Bran next. The catspaw is 8 days out and a half. Sansa, we will keep her face out of the Queen's hand. Lady will live then, because Sansa will not be where Lady is killed. Yes. Micah does not die because Joffrey does not get to ride along the trident with my sister, and my sister does not get to be promised to a Lannister boy in the first place. Yes, deaneries. Later, but begun. How? A man who knows where the Sea Lord keeps his eyes. I know a man. I thought you might. All right. She drew a long breath. She let it out. Bran is the hardest, she said. Not the climbing, the seeing. He has to be a thing he is not yet. We will have to be careful with him. Father will not like us being careful with his son. Father will not like a great many things we will be doing in the next 2 moons. No, he will forgive us most of them. He will forgive you everything, she said. He always did. He did not answer that. She stood up. She brushed the wool of her dress at the knee. She kicked the bench leg with the toe of her boot, not hard, the kick of a girl of 9, and she turned to him. What do we call this? She said. Between us. Call what? What we are doing. We will need a name for it. I will need a name to put in my head when I am tired. He looked at the tree. There is no name for it, he said. There has to be. All right, the work. The work. Yes. That will do. She walked out of the godswood ahead of him. She did not look back. She had a copper in her shoe and a brother on the path behind her, and there were 11 days less between her and the men in the south. And her heart was beating in a chest that was not, after all, the chest she had drowned in. She did not, then or after, name what was in her face. That night she lay in the gallery bed above the brewhouse and listened. Her father walked the corridor at the hour he always walked it. He stopped at her door. He did not open it. He listened to the breath of his daughter in her bed, the way he had been doing every night since the daughter had been 4 years old. Then he went on. She did not breathe like a sleeping child. She breathed like a sleeping child. He went down the stair. She heard, very faintly, the door of the Lord Solar close behind him. She counted in her head, 10. She had been wrong this morning about which raven was sitting in the drawer with the black seal. There were 2. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. The list, the second raven, when he finally laid hands on it 3 nights after, was from Catelyn's sister. JON read it twice in the Maester's tower, while Lewin's back was turned over a pot of boiled herbs that he did not need to be boiling, and that JON had asked him to boil. The second raven said in a small, frantic hand that Lysa Arryn was afraid for her son, and that the Lannisters had poisoned her husband, and that she had fled the Red Keep with the boy and was now in the Eyrie and would not come out. It was written on cheap paper. It was sealed in black wax. Catelyn would already have read it. Ned would already have read it. The Maester would already have copied it into his book. The Maester had not yet shown it to anyone outside the family. JON folded the raven the way he had found it. He put it back under the second weight on the Maester's writing desk. He turned the weight a quarter so the Maester would not see his own thumbprint on it. He left the tower. The corridor was empty. He counted the corner before he came round it. 6 days. ARYA was waiting for him in the abandoned tower. They had agreed on the first night, which was the watchtower above the brewhouse where no one went anymore because the roof had let in a winter 4 years ago, and the floor of the upper room had not been relaid. The trapdoor was the same. The bench was the same. The wood was older than the keep was old, and the underside of the bench, when she had crawled under it the evening before, had been bare oak. The bench was no longer bare oak. She had a small knife in her hand and a tinder lamp in a clay cup beside her, and the light off it played across her chin. She did not look up when he came up the ladder. "Sit," she said. "You've started. You're late. The Maester wanted me to look at a book." "You wanted him to want you to look at a book." He sat. She did not move. She kept carving. He looked at the bench underside. She had cut it in 3 rows. The first row read in letters small and clean, Father, Bran, Knives. The second row read, Sansa, Sails, North. The third row read, smaller still and at the far end, where it would be the last thing anyone read who lay on this floor and looked up, Winter. 6, he said. 5.5. You're counting the half. They will reach the long lake by morning and ride at first light. That is half a day they will gain on us by sleeping warm tonight. Yes. Pass me the knife. The new one. He had brought it inside his jerkin. It was a small wood knife with a curl in the blade, Mickens. An old one Micken had set aside because the temper had gone soft on the edge. JON had bought it off him for 2 coppers, and a question Micken had answered without thinking it was a question. He passed it to her hilt first. She set down her own knife. She took his. She tested the curl with her thumb. She turned to the bench underside and she cut, under the 3rd row, a line. Below the line she carved 1 word, dragons. She passed the knife back to him. "You went to Micken," she said. "I did." "What did he say?" "He said that obsidian was a stone the children of the forest had used for points, and that no smith in the north had worked it in 300 years, because none of them had needed to. He said he could not work it without breaking it. I said I did not need it worked. I needed it brought. And—" He laughed. Then he stopped laughing and asked me why. "What did you tell him?" "I told him a thing I have not been able to stop dreaming. Did he believe you?" He did not need to. He has a daughter the age you are. He has the kind of belief that does not need a reason. Did you ask him for steel? Not the Valyrian, not yet. I asked him for the order of the bins. The order of the bins. He keeps his iron in the order he likes. Bog iron in front, river iron behind, the ingots from White Harbor on the rack. I asked him to set aside the back rack and to keep in it the things he would not need this winter, to save them, for next. She did not answer at once. He thinks you are a strange boy, she said. He has always thought I was a strange boy. Yes, he has. He will not say anything to father. No, he likes you. He likes that I do not lie to him. You are lying to him. I am leaving out. That is not the same thing, She set her chin on her hand. Tell me about Luwin, she said. Luwin, Jon said, is the harder. Luwin reads, Luwin remembers. Luwin will already have written a note in his book about the books I asked for. And the note will be next to the note he will write about the books you asked for tomorrow. And the two notes will sit on a page he turns to often, and the page will have, in due time, a third note on it. We must give him a third note he will accept and a fourth he will not be able to think about with the third. What did you ask him for? A map of the Reach. Detailed. The kind a man drawing up a marriage proposal would ask for. He raised an eyebrow. I let him. He thinks you are pining after a Tyrell girl. He thinks I am pining after the idea of being a man who has options. That is what a Meister thinks of a bastard who reads. That will do. Then I asked for the free cities, Pentos, Tyrosh, Lies, Valentes. The trade routes from Eastwatch to the Bay of Slavers. He gave me the free cities. He did not give me the Slave Bay. I will ask him for the Slave Bay in 2 days, after he has given me the volume on Aegon's conquest. Why Aegon? Because I am a boy who has been told all his life that he might be more than a boy, and I have begun to read about kings. He will write that down. I want him to. Why? Because when father asks Luwin in a fortnight whether the bastard has been behaving strangely, Luwin will say yes. The bastard has been behaving strangely, but in the way of a boy who has begun to understand that he is 14 and his options are about to close. And father will be relieved. All right. She picked up her own knife again. Bran, she said. Yes, he dreamed a three-eyed crow. He always did. He told me, I asked. He said it had been twice. He said one of the times the crow had said his name. Then we have time. How much? Enough. He needs to be a thing that has been allowed to grow into itself before we ask him to be a tool. He is not a tool. He is a boy who can see. We let him see. We do not push him to see. He will climb anyway. Yes, father knows he climbs. Mother knows he climbs. They have told him not to climb the broken tower, and they have told him not to climb past the gallery, and they have told him not to climb when the king comes. None of those tellings will stop him. Then I will. You will. I will be on the roof above him. He climbs at the noon hour, because the watch is at the gate at the noon hour, and the kitchen yard is empty at the noon hour. He climbed up the south face of the broken tower, because the south face has the ledge with the loose stone. He climbed in Cannon at the noon hour. I will be where the noon hour is. What if he climbs a different tower? Then I will be on the different tower. You cannot be on all the towers. I have been working on it, have you? I have been climbing every tower in the keep at the same hour each morning. It takes me an hour to do them all. Cooks see me. They think I am stealing things off the line. Septa Mordane thinks I am hiding from her. Sansa thinks I am chasing cats. Father has not yet asked me. He will ask me. I will tell him a thing about a hawk's nest that he will half believe and half shake his head at, and he will let it go. He will let it go because he is preparing himself to be angry with you for a larger thing. He is. Mother. Mother is watching me. How? Mother is watching me the way she watches Sansa when Sansa is 14 and there are nights at supper. She has not yet decided what she is watching for. Catelyn is not a fool. No, she will see. She will. We have to give her a thing to see that is not the thing she will eventually see. We have to give her a daughter who has begun to grow into herself in ways that do not include knives, the needlework in front of her, the kitchen in front of her, the way I sit at the meal in front of her, and the knives in the dark. Yes, all right. He looked at the bench underside again. He looked at the third row. Sansa, he said, you said you would speak to her. I will, tomorrow, after morning court. I will offer to walk her to the godswood under the pretense of asking her a courtesy for our cousin in the Vale. I will tell her, walking, that the Queen's son has a temper, that I have heard it in the way he speaks of his sister. I will tell her that I would not, for the world, frighten her, that if she finds herself uncertain of him in the days he is here, she may come to me. I will not name what he becomes. I will give her my own door. She will not believe you. No, she will not, but she will remember it, and when he says the thing he is going to say, she will have a place to go that is not her mother's bed. That will do. A long pause. She set the knife down. Deaneries, she said, I have been thinking. How? The man in Pentos who sells my sister to the Dothraki is a man named Illyrio Mapates. He has agents in White Harbor. There is a wine merchant in White Harbor, a fat man with a thin beard who calls himself Tomard, who is one of those agents and has been for 6 years. He receives a coded letter every fortnight. Anything dropped into the slit of his back door before dawn finds its way to Pentos within a moon's turn. We will not write to her yet. We will write to him. What does the letter say? It says, the girl in the manse has friends she does not know of. It says, the eggs are not dead. It says, do not give her to the horse lord. There is a better road. We will not sign it. He will not believe it. He does not need to. He is a man who pays attention to letters he does not understand. Will it reach her? It will reach Illyrio. Illyrio will read it twice. He will be confused. He will keep it. He will think about it. He will not yet act on it. We need him not to act. We need him to wait. We need him to be slow with her. We need the horse lord to be slow with her. We have a year before the eggs hatch. We do not need her to know us yet. We need her to be alive. Yes. Later we will write to her. Later we will reach her with a name she will believe. What name? Mine. She looked at him. That is a fight you do not have to pick yet, she said. I know. Pick it later. I will. She was quiet for a beat. Tell me the last one, she said. He looked at the bench underside. He looked at the word she had carved alone below the line. We do not say it loudly, he said. No. The wall has dragonglass under the floor of the Eastern Armory at Castle Black. There is more in the caves beneath the fist of the first men. There is a forge of obsidian under Dragonstone that I have heard of from a woman in red. There is steel in the south that needs to come north. There is grain to be put up. There is a free folk king in a wood beyond a wall who will not yet have crowned himself, and who will, when he has crowned himself, be a man we want. There is a Lord Commander in the Watch who has not yet been replaced by the man who was murdered for replacing him. There is a Meister at the Citadel who knows a thing he has not yet been told he must say aloud. There are children in a cave under a hill who are not children. There is a man in a tree who is older than the tree. That is a great deal of doing for two. We have help. Where? You know where. Father when he understands. Father when he understands. He will not understand soon. No, he will understand in his own time. We will be patient. Have you ever been patient? I am learning. She let out a breath. She picked up the knife. She set the curl of the blade against the bench underside, below the word she had cut alone. She cut a small notch. That is a tally, she said. For what? For us. One day we do not need it. 2, 3. All right. Go, she said. Sansa is going to be in the gallery with her embroidery in an hour. Get her now. She will not walk with me at this hour. She will if I push her into it. Push her gently. I will push her gently. I have been practicing being a girl who pushes her sister gently. Have you? It is harder than the climbing. He climbed back down the ladder. The Meister's tower at the noon meal was quiet. Lewin had taken his porridge in his rooms. Lewin always took his porridge in his rooms, and the bell at the door was for visitors and for the day's ravens. Jon stood on the path below the tower for the count of 100. No raven came. None went. He went in. Lewin was at his writing desk with a quill in his left hand and a small scribe's blade in his right. There was a book open in front of him. The book was open to the volume of the Targaryen line that Lewin kept under the lock, and that Lewin had not, in Jon's first life, ever unlocked for him. The book was open to the page on Rhaegar. Jon did not let his eye linger on the page. "Jon," Lewin said. He set down the quill. "Come in." "Meister, did the raven from Eastwatch arrive?" "Not yet. You are early." "I was not asking after that one." Lewin watched him. "You were not. You said you would have the volume of Egon for me." "I said I would have it tomorrow." "You said the day after the morrow." "I said the day after the morrow last night." "I have it today." "Then I am not early." Lewin's mouth moved at one corner. He did not lift the corner into a smile. He kept the quill between his fingers as a man keeps a knife between his fingers when he is deciding whether to set it down. Then he set it down. "Sit, Jon." He sat. Lewin watched him a long count. "You have been asking me," Lewin said, "for maps." "Yes." "For trade routes." "Yes." "For volumes on the conquest of a continent by a family of dragon keepers, whose names ought not to be much of an interest to a boy of 14 who is a Stark of Winterfell, baseborn or otherwise." "Yes." "You have been asking me for these things in the order a man asks for them who is making a plan." Jon did not answer. Lewin reached across the desk. He turned the open book toward Jon. He kept his finger on the page. "You will not tell me what your plan is," he said. "Not yet, Meister. You will tell me only that it is not a plan against this house." "It is not." "Then you may have the volume." He set a small leather book on the desk. He pushed it across. Jon took it. He stood. He did not bow. Lewin did not require him to bow. He turned at the door. "Meister." "Yes." "There is a letter that came from the ARYA. I read it. I should not have. I am sorry." Lewin did not blink. "I had wondered which of my weights you had moved," he said, "the brass one, on the desk. You turned it the right way back." "I tried." "It was a quarter off, I know." Lewin set his hand on the book under the brass weight. "Jon, Meister, your father will be told." "By you, by you." "Within the week, you will be the one to tell him." "Yes, Meister. It was a kindness that you came back to say what you did." "Was it?" "It was." He left the tower. Robb caught up to him in the corridor outside the small hall. "Snow." "Robb, what were you doing in the Meister's tower at this hour?" "Reading." "Reading what?" "A book." "Snow." "Robb." Robb stopped him in the corridor with a hand on the shoulder. The grip was the grip of a boy who is angry and who does not yet know that he is angry. Robb's face was the face of his brother at 14, freckle-stained and high-colored and earnest. He let Robb stop him. "You have not sparred with me properly in a week," Robb said. "I have sparred with you every morning. You have let me win every morning. I have not." "You have." "I am not a fool, Jon." Jon looked at his brother. He set his hand on Robb's shoulder, mirror of the hand on his. "You have not lost a bout to me in a moon," he said. "What does that mean?" "That you are letting me. Or that you are getting better." "Jon." "Robb." Robb did not look away. "Tomorrow," Robb said, "you will not pull, not against me. I will know." Jon thought about that. "Tomorrow," he said. "Not in the yard, in the Wolf's Wood after the watch changes, with long swords." "I will not pull. You will not be ready for what I do not pull." Robb's eyebrows went up. "You and me," Robb said. "Alone." "Yes." "Why?" "Because what I am going to tell you when the bout is done I will not be able to tell you in the yard. Are you in trouble?" "No." "Is the house in trouble?" "Yes." Robb did not let go of his shoulder for a count. "Tomorrow," Robb said. "Tomorrow." Robb let go. He went to the heart tree at dusk because the dusk was the hour when no one came to it. The leaves were as red as the leaves had been. The face was the face. The pool was the pool. He stood at the face. "Who am I?" he said, quietly, to the bark. The bark did not answer. The bark never did. He had been told once, by a man older than the tree, that the bark answered when it wanted to, and that wanting was a thing the tree did at its own pace. He set his hand on the wood. He thought of a tower in Dorne and a bed of blood, and a woman with a crown of winter roses. He thought of a man in a black cloak who had told him, in a different life, that the bones of a thing were the truth of it. He thought of the smell of a brazier and the weight of a sword. He thought of a girl carving dragons into the underside of a bench in a tower no one came to. He did not say the name. He had 11 days less, and then he would have 6, and then he would have won, and then he would have a man in a long black wig at the gate of his father's keep, and he would have, somewhere in his father's house in those days, the moment in which a son said to a father the thing the father had not said to him. He did not know yet whether he would weep. He thought he might. He hoped he would not. He took his hand off the bark. He went in to supper. Chapter 3. End Chapter 4. The king's banners on the Kingsroad, the banners were the wrong gold. She had remembered them as a more brassy gold, the gold of a coin in a man's hand, but the morning was thin and gray, and the gold of the lion on the queen's wagon was a softer thing in this light. The Baratheon stag was darker, the Tully fish on a smaller wagon behind, a hot copper. The crown of the king's standard rode at the head, and the 8 lances around it were straight and silent. The column moved up the Kingsroad in a long brown line, and the Kingsroad was wet. She stood with her family in the courtyard. Her dress was clean. Her hair was brushed. Septa Mordane had brushed her hair herself in the corridor, and ARYA had let her, and Septa Mordane had said nothing about it. Septa Mordane was watching her this morning. Septa Mordane had been watching her for a fortnight. Her brother, her older brother, the one in the wool with the Lord's chain stitch, was beside her. Robb's face was the face of a young lord who has been told a thing he does not want to be true. He had been told, 3 nights gone in the Wolfswood, with a long sword in his hand and a bruise across the meat of his shoulder. He had not yet recovered his color. He had recovered most of his quiet. The quiet pressed against her right side, and she did not look at it. On her left, Sansa stood very still. Her sister had her hands folded at her waist the way a Sept girl folds them. Sansa was breathing carefully. Sansa had been crying yesterday after supper in her room with the door closed. ARYA had not knocked. She had stood outside the door for a count of 40 and then gone away. Beyond Sansa, Bran. Beyond Bran, Rickon, his hand in old Nan's. Rickon had not learned yet that he was a child in a house that kings rode into. Rickon was watching the lances. Rickon liked sharp things. Behind all of them, Ned and Catelyn on the step of the great hall. She did not look at her father. She had been looking at her father in the corners and around the doors and across the trestle at meal for 8 days now, and her father had been looking back. He did not, in those looks, ask her what she knew. He had said 3 sentences to her in 8 days that were not the sentences a father says to a 9-year-old daughter. The first had been, "A girl who sharpens her own knife should not sharpen it dull." The second had been, "You do not have to come into the yard tomorrow, ARYA, if you would rather not." The third had been, "Keep your sister near you." She had said yes, father, to all 3. The column came under the gate. Robert came down off his horse. She remembered him taller. The Robert who lived in her memory was a Robert she had not seen close, who had been a king at the high table and a laugh in a feast hall, and her own age then had made him a giant. He was not a giant. He was a great heavy man with a black beard going to gray, and a face that had been beautiful when he was the age her father was now, and had stopped being beautiful in the years between. He came down off the horse hard. His knees took it. He stood in front of her father. He looked her father up and down. "You've got fat," Robert said. Her father did not move. "Cat," Robert said past his shoulder, "Your Grace." Show me where you've buried your dead." He turned and tramped across the yard for the gate of the crypt with no Cersei, no son, no daughter, and no one but Ned at his shoulder. And the column halted in the yard in good order, and the Queen's wagon stopped, and the Queen's wagon door opened, and the Queen stepped down with her foot on a small wooden block. A page had set there for her. The Queen looked at the Stark line. Cersei Lannister had a face that had been a face Arya had hated for so long that she had stopped knowing the texture of the hatred. Now, in the yard, with a girl of 9 standing in the line, she had to find the hate again. It was not where she had left it. It was the face of a woman who had not yet murdered her father's friend in cold blood, not yet in this body's time. She had murdered him 8 weeks gone by hand of her cousin Lancel, a boy. He had not yet come. Arya did not look at Cersei's eyes. She looked at the Queen's feet. The Queen wore green slippers in mud. The Queen's slippers had a fine embroidered gold along the seam. The seam was wet. The seam would never come clean. The Queen had not thought when she put on the slippers in the wagon that there would be mud in the yard of Winterfell at the end of summer. Arya filed that away. "My lady," Catelyn said, "Lady Stark." Cersei did not look at the line of Stark children. The Queen looked at Catelyn. The Queen looked at Sansa briefly. The Queen did not look at her. The Queen did not look at Arya at all. That was as it should be. Behind the Queen, Joffrey. He came down off his horse less hard than his uncle had come down off his. He was 12. She had to remind herself. He was 12, and he was the wrong shape for what she remembered. He was thinner. His face had not yet hardened to the things she had practiced in the dark. He had the curl of mouth she remembered. He had the pale gold of the hair. He had not yet, she counted, he had not yet had her sister told she would marry him. He had not yet been told no in any way that mattered to him. He was a boy who had been told yes for 12 years and who was about to be told yes for one more day. She kept her chin down. Joffrey walked past the Stark line. He looked at Sansa. He smiled at Sansa. Sansa did the courtesy. "My Lord Prince," Sansa said, "my lady." He did not look at Arya. She made sure of it. She had put her chin so far down that her own breath was warming the wool of her collar. The hound came down off his horse behind Joffrey. She did not look at the hound. Sandor Clegane in mud was the same Sandor Clegane in mud. He was a man who would, in 5 years, drag her out of a burning inn. She did not, in this body, owe him anything yet. The wagon door opened again. Miechella stepped out. Tommen stepped out. Tommen was very small. Tommen was holding his sister's hand. She watched them across the courtyard. She had not thought about Tommen. She had not thought about Miechella. She had to remind herself, with a clean small turn of her mind, that the children were not Robert's. That their mother had lain with her brother in the broken tower of a keep south of here and would lie with her brother again, in this keep, before the moon was out. And that what was in the children's hair was, in the books at the Citadel, the hair of an oath broken in front of a god. She had to remind herself that the children themselves had broken no oaths. Tommen would die in a window. Miechella would die with poisoned wine on her lip. Not now. Not in this turn. She made a small decision. She filed that away too. Behind the children, on a smaller horse, the smallest man in the column, Tyrion Lannister rode without a page. He rode in a leather coat too big for him and a sword too small. He had a flask. He drank from the flask without disguise. He came down off the horse with the ease of a man who has been getting down off the wrong horses for 20 years and has decided to enjoy them. He looked at the Stark line. His eye stopped on Bran for the length of half a count. His eye stopped on JON for the length of a count and a half. JON was at the end of the line. Bastard's place. JON had stayed out of the courtyard until Catelyn had nodded him out. JON was standing very straight. JON was looking down at his own boots. The toes of his boots were polished. The polish was wrong for a 14-year-old bastard whose stepmother did not give him the polish. Jon had polished them himself. She had watched him do it the night before. Tyrion looked at Jon's boots. Tyrion looked at Jon's face. Tyrion looked away. She thought, he has not forgotten what an unusual boy looks like. The hour the column had been quartered, and the queen had taken her women into the guest tower, and the king had taken her father into the crypt, and the boys of the column had begun the business of finding the kitchens. She went up onto the gallery above the great hall. She did not go up the staircase. A girl of 9 went up. She went up by the linen store, through the small hatch in the back of the press where the maids dropped soiled cloth, along the inner gallery. The maids used to fold clean cloth in the winter, and out by the second door, the one without a latch. That ought to have been bricked over 50 years ago, and had not been because the keep was old and the men who would brick it over were always dead before the order was given. She came out behind the third tapestry on the south wall of the long gallery above the hall. She crouched. She did not have a long wait. Robert was below her in the hall with her father and a flagon of wine. He was drinking out of a pewter cup the size of his fist. He had drunk 3 already. He was on his 4th. His hand was steady. He was an enormous man. He had been an enormous man with a sword once, and the sword had been a hammer, and the hammer had taken the head off a prince of dragons on a riverbed, in a place she had ridden through, once, with a man whose face she had loved in a way she did not have the time now to remember. She watched her father's back. Her father was standing at the table. He was not sitting. "Sit down, Ned." "I will stand, your grace." "You will sit down." Ned sat down. The hall was empty except for the 2 of them and a serving boy at the end of the room and a hound in the rushes. Joffrey was not there. The queen was not there. The maester was not there. The captain of guards was not there. Robert had not wanted them there. Robert leaned over the table. "I want you in King's Landing, Ned. Your grace. I want you as my hand. Jon Arryn is dead. The whole bloody realm knows by now I have asked you. I will ask you here in your house, with no man to hear me, because you and I will not stand on ceremony with each other now or ever. Will you take it?" Ned did not answer for a count. "Will you take it, Ned?" "I will think on it, your grace." "You will think on it?" "Yes." "Ned, by the 7, you will think on it, you will think on it. Jon was murdered, do you know that? Murdered, I am sure of it. I want a man at my back who is not a Lannister, and there is no man I trust in this realm who is not a Lannister but you, and I have come up the King's Road in winter with my arse on a wagon bench for 30 days to come and ask you in your own hall, and you will think on it." "Yes, your grace." There was a long silence. "Tell me you will, Ned. I will give you my answer in 3 days, 3 days." "Yes, your grace." Robert was silent for a count that filled out the room. Then Robert laughed. It was not a laugh that was about anything. It was the laugh of a man who has decided to laugh because the other thing is worse. He laughed long. He hit the table. He hit it again. The pewter cup jumped. Ned watched him. 3 days, Robert said. 3 days. You miserable, cold, long-faced, sour Stark son of a Stark. I am giving you the realm and you are giving me 3 days. Yes, your grace. 3 days, then. By the gods, 3 days. And on the 3rd day you will say yes, Ned. You will say yes, and you will come south with me, and you will sit in Jon Arryn's chair, and you will hold the kingdoms together, because I cannot hold them together with this, with this. He swept his hand across the table at nothing. And you will see in due course the small lord prince of yours married to my own daughter, and we will have a—" He stopped. He did not stop because he wanted to stop. He stopped because Ned's face had moved. "Ned," Robert said, "your grace." "What? In 3 days, your grace." Robert looked at him a long time. Then Robert drank. She drew back from the rail. 3 days. He had said 3 days. 3 days was a thing father had not said when she and Jon had spoken about him. 3 days was a thing father had bought himself. 3 days was the time he had needed in order to be able to say, on the third day, the words she had been counting on him to say since the morning of the bench in the watchtower. She slipped out behind the tapestry. She did not go down to the courtyard. She went up. The roof of the guest tower was a roof she had been on a great many times in her first life, and a great many times in this one. The slate had 2 loose tiles she knew the names of. The lead at the gutter had a thin notch a girl could slide her foot into if her foot was very small. Hers was very small. She slid her foot in. The window she wanted opened from inside. She did not need to look in. She did not look in. She set her ear against the stone of the wall a hand's length from the window, and she breathed slow, and she counted her breaths the way the kindly man had taught her to count her breaths, and she waited for the voices. They came. A woman's voice she had not heard from this side of the world. Circe. The voice was low and tight. You should not have come. A man's voice. Easy, tolerant, used to women's voices being low and tight at him. I always come. Not here, not into this keep this time. The girl saw you yesterday in the yard. The girl is a child. She is the Lord's daughter. They have eyes. They have eyes. They do not know what they are seeing, James, Circe. A silence. Something is wrong here, Circe said. The voice of her brother was easier. Something is wrong everywhere we go, he said. No, not the everywhere. Here, the boy in the yard, the bastard. He was looking at me. Bastards look. It is what they do. He was looking at me the way a man looks at a woman he has seen the privy of. He was not looking at me to know me. He was looking at me to remind himself that he knew me. You are tired. I am not tired. I have not slept since we crossed the neck. Then you are sleepless. It is the same. It is not the same. Another silence. There is a girl on the roof, James said. Circe went still. There is not. There is. I heard her foot on the lead 3 minutes ago. She has been holding her breath. She is breathing again now. She is small by the foot. By the foot. By the foot. A bed creaked. ARYA did not move. She did not breathe. She had 2 heartbeats of time. The man would come to the window. He would lean out. He would look up. He would not see her unless she moved. He would see her if she moved. He would see her if she did not move. He would see her either way if he leaned the full way out. She did not wait for him to lean. She slid her foot out of the lead. She moved sideways on the tile 3 feet to her left. She lay down flat on the slope of the roof. The stone of the chimney was a hand's length away. She put the hand on the stone. The chimney was warm. Somewhere below in the guest tower, a maid had banked a fire 2 hours ago. The window opened. A head came out. Jaime Lannister leaned out of the guest tower window and looked along the lead of the roof and saw nothing. He looked along the slate. He looked at the chimney. He saw, on the slate, no small girl. He looked for a count at the chimney. Then he drew back. The window closed. The voices inside fell to a murmur she could not, this far away, parse. She lay against the chimney for a count of 200. Then she rolled. She rolled the way she had been taught to roll on tile, by a man on a roof of the temple in Bravos, who had not lived to teach her many other things. She came down off the gutter. She came down off the gutter and into a small drift of straw against the stable wall, and she did not make a sound. And she walked through the stable yard with the straw still in her hair, and she did not stop. She made one stop. JON was at the wall above the gate. He had been there since the column had come in. He had been there because that was where she had told him to be. The wall above the gate was where a man saw who came and who went, and JON was a boy in a wool jerkin who could stand on a wall and not be noticed. He had not been alone. She came up the wall by the back stair. Tyrion Lannister was standing beside her brother with both his hands on the parapet and his chin on his hands, and his face turned out toward the King's Road. She stopped on the step below the top. Tyrion was speaking. His voice carried. A fine wall snow. A fine high one. They built it to keep us out, I should think, and they have done so. Yes, my lord. You have read a great many books for a boy your age, I am told. I am told that often, my lord. By the Meister, by the Meister. He has a kind heart. He thinks reading is a salve. He is more right than he is wrong. Indeed he is. A pause. You stand at this wall a great deal, Snow. I do, my lord. I will stand at it with you then. I find I tire of the Queen's wagon. I find I tire of the Queen. I find that walls are interesting only when there is someone with you who does not feel he must speak. I do not feel I must speak, my lord. I know. ARYA watched them from the step. The imp did not look at her on the step. The imp had seen her come up. She knew he had seen her come up. He had decided not to look at her. The imp was an interesting man. She drew back down the stair. Bran climbed at the noon hour. She had been right about the hour. She was on the roof of the first keep before the bell struck, and she had been on it for half an hour by then. The first keep was the keep with the broken tower against its east face. The broken tower had the south stair with the loose stone on the ledge. The loose stone had been put there by a mason 100 years ago who had taken a stone out of his rubble pile and not put it back well. The mason was 100 years dead. The stone was not. Bran came round the foot of the tower as the bell rang. He was small. He was the small she had not let herself remember he had been. He had a smudge on his cheek where he had wiped a finger that had been in honey at the morning meal. He had his hair too long. He had his cloak knotted at the throat the wrong way. He did not look around before he climbed. He never had. She watched him from the roof. She watched him put his hand on the second ledge and pull himself up. She watched him put his foot in the third niche. She watched him reach for the loose stone at the south face. She watched him put his weight on the loose stone. She did not let him put his weight on it. She had a rope. It was a thin rope. A horsehair line knotted to a small leather loop, and it was looped around the gargoyle at the corner of the first keep with the other end coiled at her hip. She had spent 3 hours of 3 different nights tying it. She had practiced on the linen store roof, the way it played out. The line ran 4 times the length of her body, and the loop at the end was the size of a man's wrist. She did not throw the loop. She did not need to. She slid down the line. She slid down on the line at the moment Bran reached for the loose stone, and she came past him from above on a half-second swing, and she put her left arm around his waist and her right hand on the wall above the loose stone, and she took his weight on her hip. He went very still. "Don't shout." She said, "ARYA, don't shout." "What? Don't move." He did not move. She set her right foot down on the niche he had been about to step into and her left foot on the ledge above. And she walked him sideways along the wall of the broken tower with her arm around his waist and his head against her shoulder. She walked him 5 steps. She came round the corner of the tower onto the small flat of the roof of the lower kitchen. The lower kitchen roof was a flat lead. It was safe. She set him down. He sat down on the lead. He looked up at her. "ARYA," he said. "Bran, how did you get up here?" "Climbed." "You don't climb." "I have started." He looked at her. She crouched in front of him. She kept one hand on the gargoyle of the corner. She did not blink. "Bran," she said, "ARYA, you will not climb the broken tower again." "Why?" "Because if you climb it, you will fall. And if you fall, your legs will not work for the rest of your life. And a man will come into your room with a knife 3 nights after. And our mother will catch his hand in her bare fingers and lose them. And the wolves will tear out his throat. And that will be the morning a great many other things begin." He did not answer. His eyes were very wide. "I had a dream," she said. "Most of what I just told you was a dream I had. It is a true dream. Mother does not need to hear about it. Father does not need to hear about it. The Meister does not need to hear about it. You and I are going to look at it together when you have the next dream, and you will tell me what you saw and I will tell you what it means. Do you understand?" "Yes." "You will not climb again." "All right. Do you swear?" "I swear." "Good." She sat down on the lead beside him. She let her legs hang over the gutter. "Where did you get the rope?" Bran said. "The stable." "From where in the stable?" "The third stall." "Hodor uses the third stall. Hodor will not miss it. Will you teach me?" "Yes." "When?" "When you can walk on it without me holding the other end." "All right." She sat with her younger brother on the lead of the lower kitchen roof, and the sun was thin, and the wind was small, and the keep was busy below with the business of feeding 200 Southerners she did not love. There was, for one count, a thing in her chest she did not name. She got up. She helped Bran down off the roof. Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. A man who is not his father. The welcome feast had gone the way welcome feasts went. Robert had eaten his weight in venison. Robert had drunk his weight in red. Robert had pulled a serving girl onto his knee in the second hour, and Catelyn had not let her face move, and Ned had not let his face move, and Cersei had not let her face move. And Jon had not let his face move because he had been sitting in the bastard's place at the bottom of the south table, and his face had not, in any case, been wanted by anyone in the hall. Joffrey had sat beside Sansa. Sansa had been polite. Joffrey had told a story about the time he had killed a doe in the Kingswood. The story had got worse as it went. He had finished by laughing, alone at the end of the laugh. Sansa had been polite. When she had risen from the table, Jon had risen from the table at the same moment, by a count he had been keeping in his head, and he had stood at the side of the hall while she had walked the length of it, and he had walked behind her to the inner door. And he had put his hand on the inner door without touching her arm or her sleeve. He had opened the door for her. She had not looked at him. She had nodded. That had been enough. It had been the doing, not the saying, of a thing he had told her in the Godswood the day before. He had gone back to his bench. The bench had still been there. The bench was always there. The wine in his cup had not been touched. He had not drunk wine since he was 18 the first time, and not much of it since, and not at all since the second waking up. He had gone to bed at the third hour. He had not slept. The hour after he had not slept, he had gone to his father's solar door and stood outside it for a count of 50, and then he had gone away. That had been last night. This morning he caught his father at the door of the Godswood as Ned came back from his prayer. It was not yet light. The gray was the gray before light, the gray that pretends in this country to be light for an hour while it is not. The keep was waking under it. A maid had crossed the yard with a yoke of milk pails. A scullery boy had carried 2 armfuls of split wood. Sir Roderick had crossed the inner gate to the gatehouse. The household was the household. Ned saw him at the door. Ned did not say good morning. "Father, Jon," a word. Ned looked at him. He did not look at his father's face. He looked at his father's beard. He had been looking at his father's beard for a fortnight. He had been looking at his father's beard because the face above the beard was a face he had stopped having a right to look at in his first life, when he had ridden away to a place he had not come back from until he had been a thing his father would not have known. His father was wearing the brown wool. His father was wearing the same brown wool he had been wearing the morning he had spoken to Jon at the heart tree a week ago. He had not changed it. That in itself was a thing Jon noted. "The tree," Jon said. "The tree." Ned turned and walked back into the Godswood. Jon walked beside him. The pool was still. The leaves were red. The face of the tree was the face of the tree. The wind at this hour did not move them. Ned did not sit. There was no bench at the heart tree of Winterfell. There never had been. He stood at the pool. He stood with his back to the bark. He waited. Jon stood opposite him. He had thought about this in his bed for the long count of his not sleeping. He had thought about it for 10 days. He had thought about it, on and off, in a cold place in a cold time for a great many years before. He had not, in any of those years, ever found a word for it that was the first word. He found one now because he had to find one. "I have been having a dream," he said. "I will tell you about it. You will not believe me. I will tell it anyway." Ned did not speak. He kept his eyes on Jon. "There is a man," Jon said. "He sits a chair of swords. He has gold hair. He is not the king. He sits the chair because the king is dead by his own hand and the queen's with poison, and the man who knew of it died first. The hand of the king. He was poisoned. He had a wife and a son, and the wife took the son and ran for her keep in the mountains. There was a knife. There was a dagger. The dagger went into the hand of a man hired by the queen, who took it north, and used it to come into this keep on the night of a fire in the stable, and went up the stair of the broken tower toward a window where a boy was lying without his legs." Ned did not move. "That has not happened yet." Jon said, "Most of it, some of it has. The hand, the poison, the wife and son, the other has not. The other is coming. The dagger is in the queen's brother's hand already by the count of the road. It was a dragon-bone hilt and a Valyrian blade. He will let it go before the keep is empty of the king. The catspaw, the man who took it, will come up the road in 8 or 9 nights. He did not stop. The boy without his legs is Bran. He has not yet fallen. He will not fall this time. ARYA is on the roof at the hour he climbs. She has been on the roof for 10 days. She is not this morning the daughter you put in her bed last night. She has not been since the morning the king crossed the long lake. She is a girl of 9 and she is older than the keep. She has dreamed too. She and I have dreamed the same dreams." He paused. "The hand of the king," Jon said. "Was Jon Arryn?" "Lysa Arryn is in the Eyrie. The raven came under Maester Lewin's brass weight 10 days back. You read it. So did I. I should not have. I am sorry." Ned's face did not change. "The queen's children," Jon said, "are not the king's. They are her brothers. I will not need to tell you how. The pattern of the line has thrown black hair on every Baratheon match in 300 years. The line has not thrown a Lannister blonde once, by the books of the Citadel. And Catelyn's sister will write to her sister-in-law about it before the moon turns again, if she is not already, on a paper folded the way a Tully folds when she does not want her household to see the fold. There will be a second raven. There already is. You have not yet opened it." He stopped. He looked at his father. The leaves of the heart tree did not move. A long count went. Ned did not, for that count, look away from his face. "Jon," Ned said, "are you my son or a thing wearing my son?" He had thought in his 10 days that the question would be hard to answer. It was not hard. "I am your sister's son," he said. Ned closed his eyes. He kept them closed. He did not weep. Ned Stark did not weep. Ned Stark had not wept in the Godswood since he had come home from a war with a queen of winter, roses on his arm with a baby in her dying hand. Ned Stark stood with his eyes closed and his back to the bark of the heart tree, and a man who had been buried 20 years under the iron of a promise breathed out long and slow all at once. He breathed out, then he opened his eyes. "Lyanna," he said. "Yes." "Rhaegar." "Yes." "In a tower in Dorne." With a septon and a king's word in front of the gods of the realm and the gods of the wood. "She named me Aegon in the end, but she gave me to you, and you gave me a name a Stark could keep me with. I have been Jon all my life. I will be Jon. I do not need any other. Your mother was your sister. She is buried. In the crypt. I put her there. You did. The wind moved. The leaves of the heart tree moved. They did not move much. They moved enough for a man who knew what the moving meant." Ned did not bow to the tree. He had not bowed to it since the day he had come back from Dorne. He set his palm against the bark. He kept it there. He kept his eyes on Jon. "How?" Ned said. "How? How do you know this? How do you know it the way you know it?" "I lived it," Jon said. "I lived all of it. The hand died. You went south. You were taken. You died on a step of the Great Sept in front of a mob. Robb died at a wedding in the river country. Sansa was given to a Lannister boy, and then to a Bolton boy, and then to a Bolton boy's father, in that order. Catelyn died at the wedding with Robb. Bran was thrown out of a window. Arya ran. Rickon ran. I went to the wall, I rose. I was killed at a gate by my own men, I came back, I led a war, I rode a dragon. I went north of the wall a last time, I did not come back. I closed my eyes on a snowfield, I opened them in my bed. The same morning, Arya opened hers in hers. Ned did not move. I have heard nothing of this, Ned said. No, Robb knows now. He does not know it the way you know it. He knows what I told him in the Wolf's Wood 3 nights gone. I told him only that a war is coming and that I am not the boy he sparred with last summer and that I will need him. He believed you. He believed me. He always did. Yes. Ned was quiet account. He set his other hand on the bark. And Arya, Jon said, remembers the way I remember. She has not made it easy on herself. She killed a great many men in a great many places before she died in Bravos. The faceless men took her. The temple's God takes back its gifts in the end. She has been a girl of 9 for 11 days. I do not know how she has done it. I do not know how I have done it. We have done it because we have had each other to do it with. She was alone, she was. And now she is not. And now she is not. Ned took his hand off the bark. He turned very slowly to face the carved face of the tree. He stood like that account that was longer than any count Jon had stood and waded through in his life. When he turned back to face Jon, his face was a face Jon had seen before, twice. Once on the day Catelyn had birthed Rickon. Once on the day Maester Luwin had told them all that old Nan's cough had been the cough of a winter she would not now survive. In a winter that had then turned and given old Nan back to them for another 4 years out of sheer stubbornness. It was the face of a man who had been told a great thing and had decided to carry it. "Tell me what to do," Ned said. It was the warm hour then in the godswood under the pale gray light. It was the hour Jon had been carrying since the morning he had opened his eyes in his old room. He told his father. He did not tell him everything. He told him as much as a father needed in the next 10 days. He told him not to take the hand, to send Robert south without him and to find him a man he could trust in the south to be the king's hand without being the king's puppet. Not Tywin. Not Renly. Not Stannis yet. Tyrion if Tyrion would. Tyrion was riding in the column above them now, on a horse too big for him, drinking from a flask he did not hide. And Tyrion was. Jon had learned by way of a great many cuts and a great many readings of the man's mind, the cleverest Lannister alive, and the only one with hands that were not red. He told his father, the dagger. He told his father, which window of the guest tower the queen had taken for her bed. He told his father, the page of Maester Mallion's great book that opened on the names that mattered, and which the Maester at Storm's End had crossed out of his copy in the year of the Lord Hand's death. He told his father that Catelyn would be the harder of the two of them to bring to it, and that she would, when she came to it, come further than any of them. He told his father that Bran would never walk if they were not on the roof. He told his father that Sansa was not to go south. He told his father about a girl across the narrow sea with 3 stones that were not stones in a trunk under a bed in a manse in Pentos. He told his father about a wall, and a thing beyond the wall, and the count of a winter that was no longer in the Citadel's books. He did not tell his father yet about the man who had killed him at a gate by his own hand. He did not tell him about a man named Ollie. He did not tell him about a woman in a red dress who had brought him back. There was a measure in any conversation. He had spent his measure. He stopped. Ned listened. Ned listened the way Ned listened. When Jon had finished, Ned did one thing Jon had not, in any of his counting, prepared himself for. Ned reached out. Ned put both of his hands on Jon's shoulders, the way he had put both of his hands on Robb's shoulders when Robb had been small enough to climb him. He kept them there. He did not pull Jon to him. He did not embrace him. He kept his hands on his shoulders and he looked into his face for a count, and the count was a count Jon counted because he counted everything now, and the count went to 15. "You are my sister's son," Ned said. "Yes." "You are my son." "Yes." Ned took his hands off his shoulders. "Tell me about the dagger again," he said. Jon told him about the dagger again. They walked back from the godswood in the long way. Ned walked on Jon's right. Ned had not walked on Jon's right since Jon had been small enough to be put on his right. Ned was a left-handed walker. He always put his sons on the left. Jon had been on the left until the year he had stopped being on the left. Today he was on the right. They came out of the wood by the inner gate of the godswood and turned past the kennel and went up the steps to the long gallery and across the gallery and through the small door that opened onto the corridor of the keep. They did not speak as they walked. They did not need to. Catelyn was in the corridor. She had a maid at her elbow and a basket of clean linen on the maid's hip. She was on the way to her son's rooms. On the daily round of the household she had walked every morning since Sansa had been 4. She had stopped at the corner because she had heard footsteps and she had turned to greet her husband. She greeted her husband. She looked at Jon. She looked at Ned. She looked at the way Ned was walking with Jon on his right. Her face did not move. The hand on the basket at the maid's hip moved by a finger's breadth and went still. "My lord, my lady." "Jon, my lady." The maid waited. Catelyn did not lift her eye off the two of them for the count of 3. Then she nodded at the maid and went on. Ned did not look at his wife as she passed. Jon did not look at his stepmother as she passed. Catelyn looked at her husband's back, 3 paces on, and at the back of the boy walking on his right, and stopped in the corridor with the basket-bearing maid beside her. And the maid did not know that the Lady of Winterfell had stopped because she had, in the corner of the corridor. In the gray hour before the keep had finished waking, seen for the count of 3 seconds a thing she had not seen in 14 years of her marriage. She had seen her husband walking with his son on his right. She had seen her husband walking with his son. She walked on. In the solar Ned sat down at his desk and Jon stood at the window. The window opened onto the inner yard. Sir Roderick was in the inner yard with Robb. Robb was with a long sword. Robb was not this morning sparring. Robb was watching the gate. Jon watched his brother watch the gate. Ned opened the drawer of the desk. He took out a folded raven. He held it. He looked at it. He broke the seal. He read. He folded it back along the same crease. He put it on the desk. 2 ravens, Ned said. 2. You knew about both. Yes. Catelyn will need to read this one. Yes. Catelyn will need to be told a great many things, Jon. Yes. By me. Yes. Not yet. No, today. Ned set his hand on the second raven. And then we will write, Ned said, to my brother in the Eyrie. We will not write to the Eyrie, father. No. Lysa Arryn killed her husband. Lysa. At a man's hand. She wrote the letter that came from the Eyrie to Catelyn. She did not write it to her sister. She wrote it to put a name on a man who was already dead in a hand that could not be answered. We do not write to her. We do not let her know we have read her letter. We do not let her son in our keeping. She is Catelyn's sister. Yes, that will be hard. It will, all right. Ned put the raven back in the drawer. He looked up. Bring me your sister, he said. Father, bring her to me, afternoon, in this room with the door closed. Yes, father. And Jon, father, tonight I will sit at the high table with the king and I will not say yes. No, on the 3rd day I will not say yes either. No, tomorrow I will sit at the high table with my wife and tell her a thing about my sister and a tower in Dorne. He did not look down. He kept his eye on Jon. Are you ready, Ned said, to have a stepmother who is your aunt by law and a kinswoman by blood and who is not, this morning, ready for either? I am. I do not think you are. No. That is honest at least. Yes, go. Jon went. In the corridor outside the solar Catelyn was waiting. She was not waiting on purpose. She had walked the round of the upper rooms and come back to the corridor outside her husband's solar, and was, at this moment, simply not walking past it. She was standing at the small window above the inner yard with her hand on the sill. She was watching Rob. Rob was watching the gate. She turned when she heard the door behind her. She looked at Jon. Jon stopped. He did not know what to say to her in this hour. That would not be the wrong thing to say to her at any hour. He had not known in his first life what to say to his stepmother. He had even less in this one after a count of years and a country of cold. He took the simplest thing, "My lady." Jon. A long count. Was he angry with you? Catelyn said. Jon thought about the question. No, he had been with you in the Godswood a long time. Yes, that is not a thing my husband does in the Godswood with anyone in this house but me. It is not. Are you well? I am. Is. She did not finish. He waited. Is something coming? She said. The word came out before she had ordered it. He looked at her. He looked at his stepmother in the corridor, outside his father's solar in the gray hour after the welcome feast. And he looked at the line of her jaw, and the set of her hands, and the way she was holding herself a half-step further from the wall than she would have held herself before. She had been a Tully girl in a Tully river keep at 15, and her mother had taught her to hold herself, and she had held herself all her life. He thought about his answer. Yes, my lady, he said. Are you in it? I am, with my husband. With your husband. She breathed in. Her hand came off the sill. She put it on his shoulder. She did not say anything to him for a count of 5. She kept her hand there. Then she took it off. She walked past him toward the stair. She did not look back. He stood in the corridor for a long count, with the place on his shoulder where her hand had been still warmer than the wool around it, and he did not, in any of the counts he had taken since the morning he had opened his eyes in this body, mark a count he marked harder than that one. He went down. Chapter 5. End Chapter 6. Knife under the pillow, Sansa walked with Jon along the inner wall in the 3rd hour after noon. ARYA watched them from the south rampart with her chin on the stone, and her hood pulled down because the wind off the Wolfswood had a knife in it that afternoon. She had been on the rampart since the noon meal. She had told Septa Mordane she had a stomach. She had a small bag of dried apple in her pocket, and a copper in her boot, and a piece of horsehair line in the other pocket, and she did not have a stomach. But Septa Mordane had said no more to her about it, because Septa Mordane, in the last 3 days, had said less to her about a great many things. Septa Mordane had been at Catelyn's elbow at the noon meal, 2 paces back. Catelyn had not eaten. Catelyn had taken 3 small bites of bread and 1 swallow of small beer, and had set her hands on the edge of the table and had not lifted them. Ned had sat at the high table beside the king, and had said the things a host says to a king. Catelyn had said the things a hostess says to a queen. Cersei had said the things a queen says to a hostess. None of the 3 sentences had been the sentences they were. Catelyn had looked at Jon twice in the count of the meal. Sansa walked now with Jon along the inner wall, and Arya watched. Jon walked on Sansa's right. Sansa walked on his left. Jon was a half-step ahead. He had his hands behind his back. Sansa had her hands at her waist. They were not too close. They were not too far. Septa Mordane was watching from the door of the Maester's tower, and her 2 oldest maids were on the gallery above, and Robb was at the bottom of the wall in conversation with Theon. Robb was not, exactly, in conversation with Theon. Robb was loudly telling Theon about a thing in the kennel that Theon had not asked about. Robb was a wall. Sansa was speaking. Arya could not hear Sansa this far away, but she could see Sansa's lip move. She could see in the set of Sansa's shoulder the moment Sansa lifted her chin. She could see, in the way Jon set his head, the moment he answered her quietly. She could see, in the gap between his answer and Sansa's next word, that Sansa had not answered for a count. Sansa walked another 20 paces with him. She stopped at the corner of the wall. She turned to him. She did the courtesy. She did the courtesy the way a girl of 11 does the courtesy when she has decided that the courtesy is the thing she is going to give the boy in front of her because she has not yet, in any way she can name to herself, given him anything else. Then she turned and walked back along the wall towards Septa Mordane. Jon stood at the corner of the wall. He looked up. He did not look at ARYA on the south rampart. He did not look in any direction in particular. He looked up into the sky over the inner yard, which was the color of a thin gray wool. He nodded to no one. He came down off the wall. In the keep that evening Catelyn did not come to supper. Septa Mordane brought a tray to her room. Ned ate at the high table with the king. Robert ate. Robert drank. Robert spoke loudly about a hunt in the Wolfswood the next day, and Ned agreed it would be a fine thing. And the queen ate a little, and Joffrey ate, and Sansa was not at the high table because Catelyn had given orders for her, and Sansa ate in her room with the door closed. And ARYA ate in the small hall with the children of the household, Bran on her left, Rickon on Bran's left, Tommen and Miachella across from them under their Septa's eye. Tommen was small. Tommen wanted to hold Rickon's wooden horse. Rickon let him hold it. Miachella ate her bread slowly and looked at ARYA and said nothing, and ARYA looked back and said nothing. And the looking, between the two of them, was the looking of two girls who do not know, yet, that they will one day be useful to one another and who suspect, for reasons neither of them have words for, that they will. ARYA thought while she ate her bread, "I will not let them poison this one." She did not say it. She finished her bread. She did not sleep. She had stopped sleeping when she stopped sleeping. The body that was her body now had the habits of a body that had not slept in a great while. She lay in her bed under the wool blanket and she counted the hours by the bell, and the bell went. And then it did not go for an hour. And then it went. And the keep, after the long welcome feast night before, was a keep that had laid itself down early. She had her boot knife under her pillow. It was not the boot knife she had drawn out of the kitchen rack on the second day. That one she had given back. She had taken it from the rack because she had wanted to know that she could. This one had come from Mikken. Mikken had given it to her in the forge 2 evenings gone, when Jon had been at the back rack with him talking about the bin order, and Mikken had set the small knife on the anvil at the front of the forge and said, without looking at her, "A knife for a girl who would borrow her father's." She had thanked him. She had not said the courtesy. He had not waited for it. She lay with the knife under the pillow. She sharpened it at the second bell. She did not need to sharpen it. It was already sharp. Mikken did not make blunt knives. She sharpened it because the act of moving the blade along the stone was, in the count of her own breathing, the thing that put her into the place where she could move and not feel and think and not say. She had learned the stone in a temple of a god who did not exist on this side of the narrow sea. The stone was a small stone. She kept it in a small leather pouch at the head of her bed. She drew it out. She set it on her knee. She drew the blade. She did not light the candle yet. She knew the angle of the blade by the way the steel sat against her thumb. She drew it. She drew it. She drew it. The grain of the steel sang very quietly. The sound was a sound a person did not hear unless the person was listening. She was listening. She heard the footstep before the third draw. It was her mother's footstep. She did not stop the draw. She lit the candle. Catelyn opened the door without knocking. She stood at the door a count. She did not speak. She closed the door behind her. She walked across the room. She sat down on the foot of the bed. She did not lean. She did not touch the blanket. She sat with her back straight and her hands in her lap and her face the face of a woman who had not, since the welcome feast, slept either. ARYA did not look up from the knife. She drew it down the stone. A long count went. "ARYA," Catelyn said, "Mother, where did you get that knife?" "Mikken." "When?" "2 days ago. He did not ask my permission. No, he did not ask your father's permission. No, he gave it to you, he gave it to me. Put it down. She did not put it down. She drew it down the stone a fourth time. She set the stone down. She set the blade beside the stone. She did not put it under the pillow. She put it on the blanket, on her knee with the edge away from her mother. She looked up. Her mother's face was a face she did not see very often. Catelyn's face was, in the candle, the face she had at the morning prayer, and not the face she had at the noon meal. There were 3 lines in the forehead ARYA had not noticed when she had been 9 the first time. There was a count of gray in the dark hair at the temple that ARYA had not noticed because ARYA had been a 9-year-old who had not, in those years, looked at her mother to see her age. ARYA looked at her mother. "You were sharpening a knife," Catelyn said. "Yes, in the dark." "Yes. Why?" "Because I am not a fool," ARYA said. "And because the queen's brother lies with the queen, and the king's hand was poisoned for finding it out. And because tomorrow or the night after, a man with a Valyrian dagger and a horse from the Kingsroad will come up through the Wolfswood toward this keep. And he will come at the small gate that the kennel master leaves open at the 3rd bell, because the kennel master is a man who has been buying boots out of his weekly silver for 2 years, which is more weekly silver than the kennel master has. And because if that man with the Valyrian dagger comes in past the 3rd bell and gets past my father's guards, he will come up the back stair of the broken tower, and he will not be coming for father, and he will not be coming for me. He will be coming for my brother. And if he gets past father and past the guards, he will get past you, mother, in your shift in the hall with your hands." She drew a small breath. "So I am sharpening a knife," she said. Her mother did not move. The candle moved. The candle moved because the door fit poorly in its frame, and there was, always, a thin draught from the inner corridor under it. The draught moved the candle. The flame leaned. The wax slid down one side of the dish. Catelyn did not move for a count. Then Catelyn said, "Does your father know?" "Yes." "Does Jon know?" "It was Jon who told Jon." "Yes, Jon told you these things about the queen, about the queen's brother. Jon told me. Father told father. What does that mean?" "It means," ARYA said, "that the boy in the next room is the son of your husband's sister, and a man who died in a riverbed 30 miles south of here in the year I was born. It means he has known it since the morning the king crossed the long lake. It means he and I have known a great many other things between us that we have not yet had a use for, and that we will have a use for in the days to come, and we have not been sleeping much, either of us. It means father knows because Jon told him this morning in the Godswood. It means you know now because I have told you, because I do not lie to you and I never have. And you sat down on this bed in the middle of the night because you have not been sleeping either. And you came here because you needed to ask me about the knife. And the knife is the smallest thing you needed to ask me about." She looked up. Catelyn did not move. Catelyn was a woman who, when her face moved her face all at once or not at all. Her face did not move now, her hand moved. It came off her lap and across the blanket. It did not come toward the knife. It came toward Arya's hair. Catelyn put her hand into her daughter's hair the way she had put her hand into her daughter's hair when her daughter had been 3 and had been crying in the corridor. Arya let her. Catelyn did not say anything. Catelyn did not say anything for a long count. Then Catelyn said, "Why did he tell you? Why did he not tell me?" "Because father needed to hear it first, and after father, you, tomorrow. What if I had walked into this room and you had been asleep? Then I would not have told you tonight." "Then when? When you came in tomorrow after father, and after me, who?" "Robb knows. Robb. Jon told Robb in the Wolfswood 3 nights ago, Sansa. Jon walked along the wall this afternoon. He told her, not the all of it. He told her enough that she will not, when Joffrey says what he is going to say, agree with him. Bran will tell us, not us him." Catelyn was quiet. She did not take her hand out of her daughter's hair. She did not look at the knife. The candle leaned in the draught. "You are very tired, Arya." "Yes, how long?" 11 days. 11 days you have been. 11 days I have been in this body. And before that. And before that I was older than I am tonight." "How old?" Arya looked at the wall. She looked at the place on the wall above her chest where the moonlight came in through the shutter when there was a moon. There was no moon tonight. The wall was dark. "I do not know in years," she said. "I died at 17. I had been other people. I had been older than the people I had been. Some of them had been very old. Tell me one." "A girl on the canals of a city across the narrow sea. She sold shells. She was 9. You were 9. And you sold shells." "I sold them. I was good at selling them. The man who taught me to sell them taught me other things." "What other things?" "Mother." "What other things?" "How to be no one. How to be other people. How to walk into a man's house at night and walk out of it and have no man remember my face. How to make a man die in a wine cup and look like he had died in his sleep." Catelyn took her hand out of her daughter's hair. She did not take it away. She set it on her daughter's shoulder. She kept it there. She looked at the knife on the blanket. "Arya, mother, I would not have let them take you to that city." "No, mother, you would not have. You did not." "I went of my own will after we left father's head on a pole in front of the sept of Baelor, and after Yoren of the Watch died on the King's Road, and after the Queen sent a man with a sword at my back for a great many miles." She did not say it cruelly. She said it the way she said all of it. The way she said all things now. Catelyn made a small sound. It was a sound she did not make often. Arya did not look at her mother's face when she made it. Catelyn took her hand off Arya's shoulder. She put her hand to her own mouth. She kept it there for a count of 10. Then she took it down. "I am," Catelyn said. "Mother. I am not mother." Catelyn breathed. She breathed twice. "Tell me what to do," Catelyn said. It was the same sentence her father had said in the Godswood that morning, and Arya had not been there for that one. She was here for this. "Stay in the keep tomorrow." Arya said, "Do not ride to the hunt. Father will not. The king will not be pleased. Father will tell him a thing about Bran. Father will not let any son of his go on the king's hunt. The king will laugh. The king will go without him. The king will take Joffrey. Joffrey will not, in the Kingswood north of here in autumn, get up to the worst he is capable of. Father will be in the keep when the catspaw comes. So will Jon. So will Robb. So will you. So will I. When does the man come? In the second night of the hunt. I have not been wrong about the night yet. You have been right about every night." "Yes, all right." Catelyn stood up. She did not look at the knife. She did look at the candle. She walked across the room. She straightened the candle in the dish. She wiped the wax off the side of the dish with her thumb and rubbed it away on the wool of her shawl. She turned back from the candle. She looked at her daughter. "Arya, mother, put the knife under the pillow. Sleep if you can. I will sit by the door." "You will not." "I will, mother. I will sit by the door." She sat by the door. She sat in the small chair by the door. She set the chair so that it faced the bed. She folded her hands in her lap. She did not close her eyes. Arya put the knife under the pillow. She did not sleep, but she lay still. And in the lying still, she heard, over the long count of the hours, the long count of her mother's breathing on the chair by the door. And at some point in the count the breathing was the breathing of a sleeping woman. And Arya did not move, because she did not want her mother to know that she had heard. At the third bell of the morning, a man came out of the Wolfswood, half a league from the gate of Winterfell. He came alone. He came on foot. His horse he had left tied to a low branch at the edge of the wood, in the cover of a hazel thicket, with a feed bag of crushed oats and a small bell tied to its bridle that he had stuffed with rag. He came in a long wool cloak the color of wood smoke, and he kept the cloak close to him as he walked. He walked slow. He stopped twice. Each time he stopped, he listened. Each time he stopped, 3 men in heavy mail and dark wool on the rise above the wolfswood track did not move. The 3 men in heavy mail were Jory Castle, and a man named Hullen, and a man named Wayne who had been a friend of Jon's older than Rob. They were on the rise because Sir Roderick had put them on it 3 nights ago at the order of the Lord of Winterfell. They had been told by the Lord of Winterfell that they were not to engage with a man coming up through the wood at the 3rd bell. They were to watch him. They were to mark his face. They were to count his pace. They were to follow him to the small gate at the kennel. Jory Castle marked the man's face. Hullen marked the pace. Wayne watched the small bag at the man's belt. In the bag at the man's belt was a thing the shape and the weight of a long, thin knife. The man kept his hand near the bag without putting his hand on the bag. They watched him walk for half a league through the underwood of the wolfswood in the dark before the dawn, and they did not move, and they did not breathe loudly, and they did not stop him. He came to the small gate at the kennel. The small gate at the kennel was open. He came through. Chapter 6. End Chapter 7. 2 knives in the wolfswood. The catspaw came through the small gate at the 3rd bell. He came through quiet. He moved in the kennel yard with the gait of a man who had been a poacher before he had been a man with a Valyrian dagger and a purse of silver. He stopped behind the 2nd water trough. He listened. The kennel hounds did not bark. The kennel hounds did not bark because the kennel master, who had been buying boots above his silver for 2 years, had been moved from the kennel to the small cellar of the guardhouse 3 nights ago, where he sat in the dark with a man named Wayne watching him, and another man named Castle waiting for the question Ned Stark would put to him in the morning. The new boy on the kennel had been told one thing and one thing only: do not stir the hounds tonight. The hounds did not stir. The catspaw crossed the kennel yard. He came to the foot of the broken tower the way the maps in the Queen's room had told him the way was, by the kitchen wall, past the small midden, under the lower arch where the rooks roosted, and out to the bare stone at the south face. He laid his hand on the south stone. He set his foot on the first ledge. He climbed. He climbed easy. The body that climbed was a small, thin body that had had a great many walls under it. He came to the window of the broken tower at the 3rd ledge. The window was open. He swung himself through. He landed on his feet in the room. The room was the upper room of the broken tower. The upper room of the broken tower had not been the bedroom of a Stark boy with 2 broken legs, this time. The upper room of the broken tower was, at this hour, a bare stone box with a thin pallet on the floor under a blanket that had been thrown together in the shape of a boy. There was no boy. The catspaw stopped at the pallet. He stood, 3 breaths, very still. He drew the dagger. He bent toward the blanket. Jon stepped out from behind the door. He had been there a long time. He had been there since the hour after supper. He had had a piece of bread and a small cup of water on the floor by his foot, and he had taken neither, because the man would smell the bread. The man could not smell him. He had not eaten meat in a day. He had washed his hair in cold water and combed it with no oil. He had put on a wool jerkin a stable boy might wear and breeches to match, and a soft pair of boots Mikken had given him after taking out the inner sole and replacing it with felt. He smelled of nothing. He did not speak. He stepped. He took the man's right wrist with his left hand and turned the wrist. The dagger came out of the man's right hand into the pallet because the wrist could not, in the rotation Jon had used on it, hold steel. With his right hand, Jon set the heel of his palm under the man's jaw and drove the jaw up and back. The man's head went into the wall. The wall was stone. The head bounced once on the stone. The man slid down the wall. The man was not, after all, unconscious. The man was a small, thin man who had taken his head on a wall a great many times in a great many cellars before tonight. His eyes opened. His left hand came toward his boot. There was a second blade in his boot. Jon had counted on it. There had been a second blade in the boot of every man who had come up a wall after a boy of 9 for the count of years. Jon put his foot on the man's wrist. He did not put his weight on it. He put enough of it on it that the man's hand stopped going for the boot. "Be still," he said. The man was still. The door of the room opened. 3 men came in. Jory Castle, Sir Roderick, a man named Heward. They did not need to come in. Jon could have brought him out by himself. He had told Roderick they would come in anyway. He had said, "If you do not come in, my father will not believe that you came in." They came in. They took the man. Sir Roderick bound the man's wrists with a length of cord he had brought in his belt. Jory took the dagger off the pallet. Heward took the second blade out of the man's boot. Heward had a knee to the man's neck while he took it. The man did not move. 2 of the household had been in the lower passage when the catspaw had come up. 1 had been on the gallery above. Neither had been needed to engage. The plan had been Jon's. The plan had been, let him climb. Let him be where he could be reached without a noise. Let him go for the blanket, be there when he did. 2 men of the household had taken cuts in the rehearsal. Both lived. Both had been wearing the heavy mail Jon had insisted Sir Roderick put on his evening men 2 nights ago, for a drill, for a story they would not be asked to tell. Jon stepped back from the wall. He looked at the man on the floor. He did not say anything to the man. He turned and went out, and went down the stair. In the Lord's Solar Ned had a fire and a flagon of small beer and 1 chair on the far side of the desk, set apart. The chair was for the man. Sir Roderick brought the man up an hour after. The man's wrists were bound. The man's face was clean. The man had been given small beer in the cellar and had drunk it. The man was a man named Darrows, who had ridden a king's horse out of King's Landing on the 4th day after Jon Arryn had died, and who had not eaten 3 meals at the same inn since. Ned did not ask him his name. Ned put the dagger on the desk. "Where did you get it, my lord?" "The dagger." The man looked at the dagger. He did not look at Ned. He did not look at Jon, who was standing at the door with his hands at his back. He did not look at Catelyn, who was sitting in the second chair at the side of the desk, with her hands in her lap. The man looked at the dagger. "From a man who said he had been given it by a man who said he had been given it by a man," the man said. "What man last?" "I do not know his name." "You do." "I do not." Ned reached across the desk. He set his finger on the rivet of the hilt. He turned the rivet. "I have not in this country been a man who has put my hands on prisoners," Ned said. "I will not put mine on you. I have men in the cellar who will, my lord." "What man last?" A long pause. "A small man." "A small man," Ned said, "with a beard, a trimmed beard, a dark beard. He gave me the dagger and a purse and the keep on the map and the night of the second bell." "Lannister?" "I do not know." "Was he in colors?" "Black wool, plain." "Did he come alone?" "He came with 2. "Did he say a name?" "Not his." "Whose?" "Hers." "Whose?" The man looked at Catelyn. The man, with his wrists bound, looked at the wife of Ned Stark and said, "The Queen." He said the Queen wanted the boy gone and that I would not be paid until I came back with a word and a thumb. Catelyn did not move. Ned did not move. Ned looked at Jon. Jon nodded once. Ned looked back at the man. "Take him down," Ned said. Sir Roderick took the man down. The door closed. Ned stood at the desk account. He looked at his wife. He looked at the dagger. He did not pick up the dagger. "Cat." He said, "My lord, sit a while." "I would rather not, my lord." "Cat." "I will sit." She sat. She did not look at the dagger. She looked at her husband. "What now?" she said. Ned looked at Jon. Jon looked at his father. "We do not yet tell the king," he said. Ned nodded. "Why not yet?" Catelyn said. "Because we will tell the king once," Jon said. "And we will tell him in a way the king will not, in his cups, blot out. We will tell him with a witness he will not be able to laugh at. We will tell him with a piece of the Queen's hand on the table that the Queen will not, when she is brought into the room, be able to lie out of. We will tell him with my brother in the room. Bran. Yes. You will not bring my son into a room with the king too, my lady. I will bring him in when the queen is in irons. I will bring him in to tell what he has dreamed. He will not have to see her face. He will not have to look at her. He will look at his father, and he will tell his father a thing he saw in a tower, and the queen will not be in the room until his father has heard the thing and decided what to do with it. The king will hear it from his father first. And the queen's brother. The queen's brother is the harder. He will fight. He will not fight tonight. He has been told a thing by his sister that has put him on the wrong foot. He will fight tomorrow, perhaps, if we let him be where he can fight. We will not. We will move him before he knows he is being moved. We have a man already chosen for it. Who? Sir Roderick and a man named Wayne and 2 of Rob's and a chain. Catelyn closed her eyes account, and the king. The king, Jon said, will be in the Wolf's Wood for 2 more days. He will hunt, and come back, and come back. And the queen sleeps in her room while he hunts. She does, with her brother, and we will let her. We will let her. The queen sending a second man is what we want her to do. The queen sending a second man is the part of this that puts the king's name on what the queen has done. The first man can be a man who heard a name and said it under questioning. The second man we will have her hand on. How? Because the second man is going to be carrying the writing. What writing? A note in her hand. Why would she write a note? Because she will not in 2 days, when the second man comes for her sister's family in this keep, know that the first man has been taken alive. Because the first man has not returned. Because she will write a thing to her father in King's Landing that she has not yet written. Because her father is the only man in the realm she does not lie to. Because she is in this keep with no man she trusts, but her brother, and her brother is being watched, and her brother cannot leave the guest tower without our knowing it. And she will need to put a thing on a paper and trust it to a man. And she will trust it to a man tomorrow, because she does not trust it to a raven, and because there are no Lannister men in the Wolf's Wood. The man she will give the paper to is the same man who is coming up the King's Road tonight from the Long Lake with a purse he received at the gate of the Eyrie 6 weeks ago, in the dark, off a small woman who did not give him a name. He is a Tyroshi sellsword named Vargo. He will sleep in the kennel hayloft. How do you know, ARYA? ARYA. She has been on the rampart since the 2nd hour. The kennel hayloft is the place a Tyroshi sellsword sleeps in this keep, in autumn, on the night his employer is in the keep with him. It is also where the queen's woman has, 3 times in the last 2 days, gone with a small parcel that was not food. The 3rd time was an hour ago. Catelyn opened her eyes. She looked at Jon. She did not look at her husband. She looked at Jon for a long count. Then she said, "Be careful." "Yes, my lady," with ARYA. "Yes, my lady, bring her back to me when she is done." "Yes, my lady, both of you." "Yes." She stood, she went out, Ned watched her go. In the kennel hayloft, ARYA found the second man at the 4th hour of the morning. He was asleep. He had a sword at his side and a Tyroshi knife at his belt and a small leather wallet inside his shirt, against his ribs, that he had not, when he had taken off the shirt to sleep, put down. The wallet was thin. The wallet was the size of a folded paper. The wallet had no name on it. She did not, at first, take the wallet. She climbed down out of the hayloft. She went to the cellar of the guardhouse where Sir Roderick was sitting with 2 men of the household and a 3rd man in irons who had been the kennel master a week ago. She came in quietly. She did not speak to the man in irons. She spoke to Sir Roderick. "He is in the hayloft. He has a wallet. He is asleep. He has not moved in an hour. 2 men. Quiet." "Aye, my lady." He did not call her my lady because she was 9. He called her my lady because she had been at his door at the 3rd hour with a piece of horsehair line in her pocket and a sentence about the gate that he had not been told. He took 2 men. She walked him to the hayloft. She did not go up the ladder. The men did. The men brought the Tyroshi down in irons before he had woken to the fact of who was around him. They put a wool sack over his head. They walked him across the kennel yard. They walked him into the cellar of the guardhouse. ARYA went up the ladder once they had brought him down. She took the wallet. She brought it to her father. In the Lord's solar, Ned opened the wallet. Inside the wallet was a small folded paper. He unfolded it. It was a hand he knew. He had not, in the last 20 years, often had a chance to know a hand of Cersei's. He knew this one. He had seen, once, a letter she had written to her father from the Red Keep, in his time as hand under King Aerys, when Ned's father had been at court. Tywin had taken the letter out of his desk to compare it with a thing a serving girl had sent. Ned had been a boy. The hand had been a hand the boy he had been had remarked on, because it was a girl's hand and it had been very small and very neat. It was the same hand. The note was 3 sentences. The first sentence said, "The first man has not returned." The second sentence said, "Send 3 more to the King's Road north of the Twins." The third sentence said, "The Stark girl saw you at the window." Ned read it twice. He folded it back along the same crease. He set it on the desk beside the dagger. He looked at JON. JON looked at his father. "That is enough," Ned said. "That is enough. In the morning," Ned said, "we tell the king. In the morning we tell the king." The king did not come back from the Wolf's Wood that morning. He came back at the 3rd hour of the afternoon. He came back in his cups and laughing, and with a boar across the back of 2 pack horses, and a gash in his thigh from the boar's tusk, that he had sworn at the Maester about all the way back, and which Maester Luwin set about stitching as soon as the king was on his bench. The king saw the Lord of Winterfell at the door of the solar. "Ned," the king said, "Your Grace, come and drink with me. In a while, Your Grace. You miserable, in a while, Your Grace." The king looked at him. The king looked at him over the Maester's shoulder. "It is bad," the king said. "Yes, how bad? As bad as a thing has been in this realm in 18 years. The king did not, then, drink. The king let Maester Luwin finish the stitches. The king stood up. The king came into the solar. The conversation between the Lord of Winterfell and the King of the 7 Kingdoms took in the count the half-hour between the 3rd hour and the 3rd half-hour. There were 3 men in the room: the Lord, the King, and the Lord's wife. JON was not in the room. ARYA was not in the room. Bran was not in the room. Ned had said before that this conversation was not for any of them. JON had agreed. The Lord told the king a thing. The Lord told the king another thing. The Lord put the dagger on the desk between them. The Lord put the note on the desk beside the dagger. The king did not speak for a long count. The king looked at the note. The king looked at the dagger. The king picked up the dagger. The king put the dagger down. The king said one word. The word was a name. The name was Cersei. Catelyn said, "Yes." The king said, "Where?" Ned said, "In the guest tower." The king said, "Bring her." Ned said, "Not yet, not tonight, in the morning, with me, with my men, with my house around her, not at the high table, not in the great hall, in this room." The king looked at his old friend. "All right," the king said. The king sat down. The king did not drink. The king put his head in his hands. He stayed that way a count. When he came up out of his hands, he did not look at the dagger. He looked at the note. "You said you would think on it for 3 days, the king said. "Yes." "You will not say yes." "No." "You will not be my hand." "No." "Ned." "Robert, I will not be your hand because you will need a hand in King's Landing the day after tomorrow, and I will not be in King's Landing the day after tomorrow. I will be in this keep with my children and a guest who will be in irons and a winter coming on and a wall behind it that does not any longer hold what it ought to hold. I cannot leave them. I will not. Ned. Robert." The king did not then speak for a long time. Then he said, "Who then?" Ned looked at Catelyn. Catelyn did not, at the look, lift an eye to it. Ned said the name Jon had given him. The king did not laugh. The king did not, at the name, laugh. The king looked at the dagger on the desk, and the note beside it, and a thing in his own old life that he had not for 14 years let himself look at, and he said, "Tyrion. Yes, my brother of a brother. Yes, he is a Lannister. He is the only one of them with hands that are not in your sister's hand, also red." Catelyn looked at the king. "Cat, you knew him in your river house when he came up after the war. I knew him." "What did you think?" "I thought," Catelyn said, "that he was the cleverest man at our table, and that he was sober for half of his meal, which was longer than any of his kin." Robert laughed. The laugh was not the laugh he had laughed coming up the King's Road. It was a smaller laugh. It was the laugh he had laughed sometimes in his cups in the years just after the war, when Ned had been with him, and they had been together men still and not yet a king and a warden of the North. "Tyrion," Robert said. "Tyrion. The gods are laughing at me, Ned. They might be. I will go back to King's Landing with my queen in chains and my hand a dwarf and my friend not in my service. Yes, and my children. Your children Tyrion will know what to do with. My children are not mine. Some of what is not yours is yours by other means. We will speak of it." Robert closed his eyes a count. "All right," he said, "all right. I will sleep on it, sleep on it. In the morning we take her. In the morning we take her. In the morning my old friend Eddard Stark and I will go up the steps of the guest tower and we will take my queen in irons. Yes. And not before. And not before. Good." Jon was at the wall above the gate when Jaime Lannister crossed the inner yard at the 4th hour of the evening. Jaime was alone. He was not, that hour, alone by his own arrangement. He had been alone in the guest tower with his sister, and had come down because his sister had said a thing he had not, in any of the days, agreed with her about, and he had wanted air. He had come down the back stair. He had crossed the inner yard. He had crossed under the wall. He had looked up. He had stopped. The boy on the wall was a boy in a wool jerkin with his hands behind his back and his eyes on the western sky. Jaime watched him. Jon turned. He did not turn to look at Jaime. He turned to look at the sky in the other direction. He gave Jaime, in that turn, a clean look at the line of his neck, and the line of his jaw and the shape of his ear, and the way his hair was tied back at the nape of it. The lines were the lines of a man Jaime had killed in his youth on a riverbank in front of King Ares. Not the same. Close enough. Jaime stood under the wall a long count. He did not call up. He did not climb the stair. He turned after a while and went back across the yard, and went up the back stair of the guest tower, and into the rooms where his sister was, and he did not, when he came in, tell his sister why he had come back in. He sat in the chair by the fire and he did not speak for an hour. He poured a cup, he drank it. He did not drink the second. He looked at the wall through the window. The boy was no longer on the wall. He went to bed. In the guest tower at the 7th hour Cersei sat at her own window and watched a raven not arrive. She had sent 4 ravens in 8 days. 4 ravens had not been answered. This was, in the count of the realm, not a thing that ought to have been. The citadel did not lose ravens. The Maester at Winterfell was a man she had known by reputation since she had been a girl, and he was an honest man, and he was not a man who would lose a raven on purpose. The ravens she had sent had not been losable. One to her father, one to her brother, the other one, the one in King's Landing. One to her uncle Kevin. One to a man at the Eyrie whose name she did not say even in her own head. None had been answered. She had sent a man for it. The man had not come back. She had sent a second man, for a thing that was not the same thing as the first, and the second man had not come back either, and the second man had not been seen since the 3rd bell of the previous morning. She poured a cup. She drank it. She poured a second. She did not drink it. She looked out at the keep. A boy was on the wall above the gate. She stood at the window a long count. She did not know the boy. He turned after a while and looked at her window. He looked at her window the way a wolf looks at a deer it has decided to wait on. Then he went down off the wall. Cersei sat down on the bed. She did not that night sleep. Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. The crow in the broken tower. Bran told them at the morning meal. He had not, at the start of the morning meal, known he was going to tell them. He had not gone up to the dais with a plan. Bran had been a small boy walking into the small hall behind his mother with his sleeve pulled down over the wool of his cuff, to hide a smudge that old Nan had not got out of it in the wash. He had been a child who had been awake since the second hour because he had had a dream. The dream had been a black bird with 3 eyes that had spoken in his ear. He had not at first said any of this. He had eaten his porridge. He had drunk his small beer. Then he had set down his spoon. Then he had looked up. Catelyn had been at the high table beside Maester Luwin. The Maester had been on her right. Ned had been on her left. The king had not yet come down. The queen was in the guest tower under the watch of 2 men in mail. Sansa had been at the children's table beside Tommen and Miechella. Joffrey had been at the high table at the far end. Robb had been at Theon's bench. Jon had been at the bottom of the south table at the bastard's place. Arya had been across from Bran on the south bench with her boot tucked under the bench and the boot knife loose in the boot. Bran had looked at his mother. "Mother," Bran had said. "Bran." "I had a dream." Catelyn had looked at Bran. "What was the dream, my love?" "A crow, a crow, a crow with 3 eyes. He spoke. He told me a thing." The Maester had looked at Bran across Catelyn. "What thing, child?" Luwin had said. Bran had thought. He had been thinking for an hour in his bed before he had come down. He had had the words almost. He had needed them to be very plain. He said, Bran said, that there is a tower in the south of a great keep where 2 people, who are brother and sister, lay together 5 summers ago in the summer of the 2nd harvest. He said the boy who saw them was thrown out of the window by the brother, but the boy fell on a man's shoulders and lived. He said the boy was me. He said it had not happened yet, but it almost had. He said it had not happened because Arya was on the roof. He looked at Arya. Arya did not look at him. Bran looked back at his mother, he said. Bran said that the brother and the sister are the brother and the sister in the keep, this week. He said there are 3 children of theirs, and the 3 children are not the king's. He said the queen sent a man with a knife to come up the tower and kill me last night. He said the man did not come up because JON was waiting in the room. He said the queen will, today when she is brought before the king, deny it. But the king will not believe her, because the king is, in the end, a man who knows when he is being lied to. He said there is a man on the road north who is glad about all of it, and the man on the road is the man we will have the most trouble with in time, and the crow does not yet have a way to tell me what to do about him. He said his name is Petter. Bran stopped. He looked at the Maester. I have not told a lie, Maester, he said. The Maester did not, that moment, say anything. Catelyn set her hand on Bran's wrist on the table. The hand was very still. My love, she said. Mother, did the crow tell you anything else? Yes. What? He told me, Bran said. That I will dream more dreams. He told me that in some of the dreams I will be in other places. He told me that in one of the dreams I will be in a tree. He did not say which tree. He did not need to. Catelyn looked past Bran at Arya. She did not say anything. She did not need to. She held Bran's wrist on the table. She looked at her older daughter across the bench. She looked at Maester Luwin, who had set down his cup of small beer and was not, for a count, going to lift it. Then she looked at her husband. She nodded. Ned stood. The hall stilled. Maester, Ned said. My lord. You will come with me, my lord. Robb, father, bring my brother, father, my brother of arms. The king, he is not yet, bring him. Robb stood. Robb did not, that morning, speak any of the question on his face. He went out of the hall. Ned did not, for a count, look at any of his children but Bran. He looked at Bran account. He did not say anything to him. He turned and went out. In the solar, an hour later, Robert came in with the gash on his thigh stitched, and his hair undone, and his sleeve out of one wrist, and his eyes a color the queen had not in 3 years seen them. The king had not in 3 years been sober at the second hour of the morning. He was sober now. He stood at the desk and he looked at the dagger on the desk, and the note beside the dagger, and a thing wrapped in linen on the third corner that was not yet opened. He looked at his old friend across the desk. He looked at Catelyn. He looked at the Maester. "Tell me," the king said. Ned told him. He told him as plainly as he could. He told him about the dream. He told him about the boy who would have died and had not. He told him about the man on the road north of the keep. The small man with the eyes that did not, in any of his life, sit still on a face that did not, in any of his life, sit still on him. And he told him, "That man is named Petyr Baelish. And that man will be a great trouble to all of us in the year ahead." He told him about the broken tower and what Bran had seen in the dream. He did not look at the wife of his old friend. He set his hand on the linen at the desk. He uncovered it. It was the page of Maester Malion's great book on the matings of the great houses of the realm. He had had the Maester copy it. He had it under the king's hand. He set his finger under one line. "My lord," he said, "these are the matings of Baratheon and another house for 300 years. Black hair everyone, to the line. Read." The king read. The king had not read so much in a week. He read again. He looked at his old friend. He did not for account speak. "Tyrion will laugh at me," Robert said. "He will not laugh. He will not at this. Ned, Robert." The king set the page down. "Where?" the king said. "In her rooms. Bring her. With you, Robert. Not by you, not with your hand on her arm. With 4 of my men and a chain, and the Maester with the writing and the dagger in front of her, and the small lord this time in the room. Tyrion. Yes, he does not know. He will know in an hour. I had a man go to him at the first bell of the morning. By the gods, Ned, by the gods." The king put his head in his hands. He did not weep. Ned saw him account. Then the king came up out of his hands. The eyes were what they had been on the morning he had come up the King's Road off the horse. The eyes of a man who has remembered, in the night, that he has been a king for 15 years, and that the kingship had a cost, and the cost was not paid by the man who had taken it from him at this moment. "Send for her," the king said. ARYA was in the corridor outside the solar. She was where she had been told to be. She was sitting on the small bench by the linen press with a piece of needlework on her lap that was, by any Sept's count, a poor piece of needlework. She held it the way Septa Mordain had told her to hold it. She did not embroider. She listened. She heard them bring the queen up the stair. The queen did not, for the length of the stair, speak. The queen had not, when she had been taken at her door, made the noise her cousin Lancel had made in a different year by a different bed. The queen had drawn herself up and said one sentence, and the sentence had been, "I will see my brother." Sir Roderick had said, "You will see the king." Then the queen had walked. She walked past ARYA on the bench. She did not look at ARYA. ARYA did not look up from her needlework. She had a needle in her hand. She set the needle in the cloth. She listened to the door close behind the queen. In the solar the queen stood. She did not sit. She had not been told she could sit. Sir Roderick had taken her in by the wrist with a chain and had walked her to the front of the desk. He had not put his hand on her shoulder. He had not put his hand on the small of her back. He had been a soldier all his life. He had stood her in front of the desk with as little touching as was possible. He had moved the chain so that her wrist could rest on the desk if she chose to rest it. She did not rest it. She looked at her husband across the desk. She looked at the dagger. She looked at the page. She looked at the note on the corner of the desk, folded along its old crease. She did not look at the Maester. She did not look at Catelyn. She did not look at Ned. She did not look at Tyrion, who had been brought in by the back stair and was at the wall by the window, with both hands on the sill and his eyes on his sister. Tyrion did not, when his sister was brought in, speak. He did, when his sister was brought in, drink. He drank slowly off a cup he had brought with him, and he set the cup down. He set the cup down on the sill very gently. "Cersei," the king said, "my lord, this is your hand." She looked at the note. The note was by the king's elbow, 6 inches under her eye. She did not look at it long. "Yes," she said. The king closed his eyes. He did not, for a count, open them. When he did, he looked at his old friend. He looked at the Maester. He looked at his brother of a brother by the window. "Tyrion," he said, "your grace, speak. It would be better, your grace, if my sister spoke. Speak, Tyrion." Tyrion looked at his sister. He took from inside his coat a folded thing of his own. He came to the desk. He laid it beside the note. It was a list. He did not unfold it. "The Lord Hand, who is dead, your grace, kept names," Tyrion said. "He kept them in a hand a clerk would not know. I have it. I came up the King's Road with it. My sister knew I had it. She had paid the clerk who copied it. The clerk is now dead, but the second copy I have is not the copy she paid for. There are 8 names on this list. 4 are gold cloaks. 2 are men of the small council. 1 is a knight of the King's Guard. 1 is, my lord, the master of coin." The king did not, for a count, speak. "Littlefinger," he said. "Yes, all of them, in her, in hers, and in my father's at one degree or another, your grace. Not all of them with her hand. Some with my father's. My father is not in this room. My father is at Casterly Rock. He will need to be made answer for the names that are his." The king looked at his queen. "It is the truth," Cersei said. The king did not, for that count, breathe. "All of it," he said. "My brother's list is the truth. Most of the names. Some he has chosen, I will not say which." "Cersei," she looked at him. "I did what was best for my children," she said. "I have always done what was best for my children. I will not in this room say I have not." The king did weep then. It was a small weeping. It was the weeping of a man who had killed his own youth a great many years ago and had not, until the morning of his return to his old friend's house, allowed himself the count of looking at the body. He did not weep loudly. He wept once. He put his hand over his face. He did not, for the rest of the count, take it down. Ned watched him a moment. He did not look at Cersei. He looked at Catelyn. Catelyn was looking full at the count, at the queen. The queen did not return the look. "Take her down," the king said into his palm. Sir Roderick took her down. In the corridor, ARYA did not lift her eye when the queen came past her on the chain. The queen did not look at her again. The queen went down. ARYA listened to her footstep go down the corridor and down the stair and along the lower corridor and out into the yard and across the yard and into the guest tower, and the guest tower door close, and the bar of the door go across. She set the needlework down on the bench. She got up. She walked across the corridor. She went down into the yard. The guest tower was, after the queen had been put in the upper rooms and her children in the rooms below and her brother in the rooms below those, a tower with bars at every window and a man on every door. The bars had been put up that morning by Mikken and 3 of his apprentices. They had worked since the second bell. They had not been told what they were putting them up for, but they had not asked. ARYA stood in the yard below the second window of the lower rooms. She did not look up. She looked at her own boots. She listened to the keep. The keep was, in the count of the morning, a keep that did not yet know what its own morning had been. The kitchen yard was the kitchen yard. The kennel was the kennel. The forge was hot. The men of the household were at their posts. The men of the king's column were, by the king's order, on the inner walls, and would be on the inner walls until the king went south. The king's column had been told a thing about the queen, by the king himself, at the 3rd hour. The king had said the words in front of the column, and had not said them softly. The column had received the words the way columns receive the words of kings. She lifted her eye to the second window. Jaime Lannister was at the bars. He had a piece of his own hair in one hand. He was, for an absent reason no one would have known the reason of, plaiting it. He stopped plaiting it when he saw her. He looked at her. She looked at him. The two looks were a count. He did not say anything to her. He did not raise an eyebrow. He nodded once. She nodded. Once. He did not nod again. She did not nod again. She turned after a count and walked back across the yard. She did not look back. Tyrion came down out of the keep at the 4th hour and crossed the inner yard and found Jon at the door of the small library above the Maester's tower. He did not, at first, speak. He took Jon by the elbow. The grip was not heavy. He drew Jon along the corridor of the small library and out the small door at the end, and onto the narrow walk between the library and the rookery, which was a walk only the Maester and a man who had been climbing every wall in this keep at the same hour each morning had any reason to use. He stopped at the railing. "Snow, my lord. I have a thing for you, my lord." He drew a thing from inside his coat. It was a small leather wallet, half the size of the wallet his sister had paid the kennel master with. It had 3 names written on the inside of the cover in a clerk's hand, and the names were the names of 3 men of the gold cloaks of King's Landing. He held it out. "These 3 you can trust," he said. "These 3 the small lord they will call their hand will name as his own when he gets to the city, and one of them will be his captain of the cells. He will not, when he names them, know their names. You will give them to him in a letter, on a paper you fold along its right crease." "How do you know which crease?" "I will tell you which crease. It is a small thing. It is, as it happens, a thing my father had a man teach his children when we were small, and I, alone of his children, paid attention to the lesson. Why are you giving these to me?" "Because you are the boy who put a thing in my hand the day I came up the King's Road with a queen who was my sister, and is now my sister in a different way. And the thing was a small look you gave me along the rampart that I have, this morning, had cause to remember. And because you are not the boy you look, and because you do not, when I ask you a thing, lie to me, I do, not yet today you have not, not yet today. Why are you giving?" He stopped. He looked at Tyrion. "My lord, will you be the hand of the king?" "That is for the king to ask." "He has asked you, he has. Will you take it?" Tyrion looked across the inner yard. The yard had its full count of men, the king's column on the walls, the household at the doors. A boy of 9 on the far side of the yard with a piece of needlework rolled up in her hand, who had looked once across the yard at the small lord at the railing of the Maester's walk and looked away. "Yes," Tyrion said, "I will take it, my lord. Snow. You will be a better hand than was given to that chair by the gods. You do not know, I know. How, my lord?" He did not, for that count, answer. Tyrion did not press. Tyrion drew his hand off the railing. "All right," he said. "All right, go to bed, Snow. You have not slept in a week." "I have slept." "You have not slept in 2 weeks." "I have not slept in a longer count than that, my lord." "That also I do not press on. Go and lie down. Lie down with the door closed and your boots off. Have your sister come and sit on your chair and watch you do it. She will. She has been watching you the whole morning from the windows above the trestles, and you have not, in the morning, looked at her." "I have not." "Look at her now." He looked. ARYA was on the far side of the yard. She looked at him. He nodded. She did not nod back. She crossed the yard. She crossed the yard the way a girl of 9 crosses a yard. Her stride was not the stride of the morning. Her stride was the stride of a girl who had, in the count of her morning, sat on a bench outside her father's solar with a piece of needlework on her lap, while a queen walked past her with a chain on her wrist, and had not, in the count, set the needle into her own thumb to keep her hand still. She had let her hand be still on its own. She came up the stair onto the Maester's walk. She did not, at the top, look at Tyrion. She looked at her brother. He looked at her. The look was a count. It did not need a word. "Snow," Tyrion said, "my lord, go to bed." He went. She went with him. In the corridor outside Jon's room they stopped at the door. She did not, at the door, speak for a count. Then she said, 8 days. 8 days. He nodded at me. I know. I do not know yet what to do with it. You do not have to do anything with it yet. He saw me on the roof. I know. He will when his father comes north, and he will, in a moon, be in a different place to all of this. Yes. All right. She opened the door for him. He went in. She did not, after he had gone in, close the door behind him. She stood at the open door. She looked at her brother as he sat down on the side of the bed and pulled the boot off his right foot. She did not, for that count, name what was in her chest. Then she closed the door. She went down to the kitchens. She got a bowl of porridge and a piece of cheese and a small piece of bread, and she sat at the end of the long table where the maids sat at this hour, and she ate. She did not, for the count of her meal, say anything to anyone. When she had finished, she stood, and she went out, and she crossed the yard to the heart tree of the godswood, and she stood under it a count, and she did not pray. She had nothing to pray. She did not pray for a count of 50. Then she said one thing. She did not say it loudly. 8 days. She said. The leaves did not move. She went back to the keep. Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. The raven and the ash. The king rode out of the gate of Winterfell 3 days after he had brought his queen into the Lord's solar. He did not ride at the head of his column. He rode at the back of it, with 2 of his own men of the Kingsguard at his stirrup, and a great hood pulled forward over his hair. Ahead of him, in a wagon with bars on its small windows, sat his queen. Ahead of the wagon, on 3 horses kept close together by Sir Roderick's men and a man of the Kingsguard who had been the Lord Commander's nephew in Aerys's day, rode the 3 children. Ahead of the children, riding on a Tully horse of Catelyn's choosing, was the new hand. Tyrion Lannister had a small pack at his pommel and a flask at his hip and a clerk on a pony behind him, and the clerk had 3 books in a leather wallet. The Lord of Winterfell stood at the gate with his lady on his right. His son stood behind him. Jon stood at his right shoulder. Ned had not, in 8 days, put Jon anywhere but on his right. Robert reined in at the gate. He looked down at his old friend. Ned, Robert, you have asked a great many things of me in this house. You have not asked one I have wanted to give. No, you have given me a few I did not want. Yes, you have not in any of this made it easier. No, Robert was quiet account. I will not forgive you for not coming south. You may forgive me when the winter is past. I will not be alive to forgive you when the winter is past. You may be wrong about that, your grace. Robert looked at him. The look had in it a thing the look had not had on the morning the column had come up the King's Road. It had a thing Robert had not, in 5 years of his sitting on a chair of swords, allowed the eye to have. I might, he said. He did not finish the thought. He did not need to. He looked then at Catelyn. Cat, your grace. You have given your husband a quieter house than the one I left him in. Your grace. I will remember it. Yes, your grace. He looked then at the boy at his old friend's right. He did not, in the count, speak. He looked. Jon did not, at the look, lower his eye. Robert turned his horse. He took the road. He did not look back. The column went when the last of the wagons had gone through. Ned set his hand on the iron of the gate. He looked at his wife. He nodded to Hullen at the gatehouse. Hullen turned the wheel. The bar of the inner gate dropped into its slot. The gate did not, that day, open again. In the Maester's tower at the 2nd hour of the afternoon, Jon and the Maester sat at the long writing table with 3 things on the table between them. The first was a roll of vellum on which the Maester had written a list. The list was the list of the orders the Maester would send out under the Lord's seal in the next 10 days. There were 43 orders on the list. The Maester had written them in a small, clean hand. The second was a wallet of 3 sealed letters. 2 were addressed to merchants in White Harbor. 1 was addressed to a steward at Dragonstone. None of the 3 letters said, on the face, what they said. The third was the page of Meister Malion's great book. Llewyn had his hands flat on the table. He was looking at Jon. He had not, in the count of the 8 days, asked Jon any question he had not asked. He asked one now. "Jon, Meister, the orders to Dragonstone." "Yes." "The order I wrote at your asking is an order for 50 barrels of pitch." "Yes." "There is at Dragonstone very little pitch." "There is at Dragonstone very little of a great many things. There is also a thing the keep has a great deal of that the realm has in its books mostly forgotten. Obsidian." "Yes." "You will be sending a man to fetch the pitch." "Yes." "And he will come back with pitch. And on a second wagon, a thing he will be told is bog iron, in barrels, with a seal on each barrel that is the seal of a steward of Dragonstone I have a name for. Stannis Baratheon's steward." "Yes." "Stannis Baratheon will not, in the long count, be pleased to know that you have done this without his knowing." "He will." "Stannis Baratheon is a man who will, in time, be pleased that a thing was done at his keep that gave him a debt he can call in. He is not a man for thank-yous. He is a man for ledgers. We will, when the time comes, present him the ledger. He will pay it. Stannis Baratheon is not yet in this hour a man we are talking to. No, he will become one in a moon and a half. By whose road? By a small letter sent from this tower, by a hand he will not know, on a paper folded along its right crease." Llewyn's eye did not move. "Jon, Meister. I have been a Meister 30 years. I have not, in those years, set my chain to a thing I did not, in the count, understand. No." "You will tell me one thing." "What thing?" "You will tell me what I am setting the chain to." Jon looked at the Meister. He looked at the wallet on the table. He thought, in the count, about the answer he had given his father in the Godswood, and about the answer he had given his stepmother in the corridor, and about the answer he had given his half-brother in the Wolfswood, and about the answer he had given his sister in the watchtower. He had not, in any of those, told a man a thing he had not, at the time, been ready to be told. He was ready now to tell Llewyn a smaller part. "You are setting the chain," Jon said, "to a long winter. To a thing beyond the wall that the books of your order have not been afraid of in 9 generations. To a fight, in the count, that we will lose if we are not ready, and may yet lose if we are. To 3 eggs, in a trunk under a bed in a manse in a free city, that are not stones. To the keeping of the children of this house alive." Llewyn did not speak. He looked at the page of Meister Malion's book on the corner of the table. He looked at Jon. He set his hand on Jon's wrist. He did not, in that, speak. He took his hand off Jon's wrist. He picked up the quill. "Tell me the next order, then," he said. Jon told him. The letter to the man in White Harbor went out at dusk by the rider Micken's apprentice, had ridden once before, with a small leather bag at his belt and a knife in his boot, and a pair of fresh boots paid for in coppers that did not pass the kennel master. He carried the letter inside his shirt. He carried, in the bag at his belt, 3 pieces of silver and 1 piece of gold, and a small thing wrapped in oilcloth that was, by its shape, a small wooden token of no value at all. The token was a thing the merchant in White Harbor would recognize. It had been carved by a smaller carver in a city across the narrow sea, 15 years gone, and Jon had had it carved by Micken from a drawing he had drawn on the back of a piece of paper in the Meister's tower. The drawing had been a small dog with a curl in its tail. The merchant in White Harbor was a man who had loved a small dog with a curl in its tail in a city across the narrow sea 15 years gone. The merchant in White Harbor would not, when the rider came, ask him a thing. He would put the letter in a pentoshi trade pouch, and put the pouch in a small wooden box, and put the box on a ship that left at the next tide for Pentos. The letter, when it reached Pentos, would not be opened by the man it was addressed to. The man it was addressed to was not, after all, the man it was for. The man it was for would, in a fortnight, take it from a box he had not been told to look in, and would read it once, and would look at his 3 eggs in a trunk under a bed, and would not, for the count of his reading, breathe more than once. The letter said 3 things. The first thing was, "Do not go with the horse lord." The second thing was, "The eggs will hatch." The third thing was, "You are not the last." It did not sign a name. Sansa walked with Jon along the inner wall in the second afternoon after the column had gone. He had not asked her. She had asked him. She had come to him at the door of his small room with a piece of needlework rolled up in her hand, and Septa Mordane in the doorway behind her. "I would like, my lord brother, to go up onto the wall, my lady sister. It is a fair afternoon. It is. Will you go up with me?" He had looked over her shoulder at Septa Mordane. Septa Mordane had not lifted an eye to it. Septa Mordane had been, in those days, a different woman to him. She had been the woman he had not known the woman to be when he had been 14 the first time, when he had heard about her under the eye of Lady Stark's morning prayer and not, in the count of his life under that morning prayer, looked at the woman herself. He looked at her now. She was a small, thin woman with a thin mouth and small, careful eyes. She had stood at Sansa's elbow at the noon meal that day, and she had not, at the noon meal, said any of the words she had said before. She had said once to Sansa, "My lady, the bread." That had been all. She did not, now in the doorway, say a thing. She nodded. He went up onto the wall with his sister. The wind on the wall was, at the second hour after noon, a small wind. The sky was a pale gray wool. The keep below them was the keep. The dogs in the kennel, the maids at the wash, 2 of Robb's friends sparring at the wooden ring. Bran on the gallery with a stick he was learning to keep on his palm. Sansa walked on his right. He had been told by Septa Mordane in the doorway that he should walk on her left. He had said, "I will walk on her right." Septa Mordane had not to that said a thing. Sansa walked with her hands at her waist for half the length of the wall. Then she stopped. She did not look at him. She looked at the wolf's wood. "My brother," she said, "my lady. Will you say what you said to me on the wall the other day? Will I say it?" "Yes. I said 3 things, my lady." "Say the third again." "That if you found yourself uncertain of him in the days he was here, you might come to me." "Not that one." "The second." "Not that one either." He looked at her. She was looking at the wolf's wood. She was 11. She had been, in his first life, married at 13 by force in a city she had been a prisoner in, to a boy he had killed in a tower a different way around. She had been beaten with the flat of a sword in the gardens of the Red Keep on the orders of a queen who was, that hour, in a wagon under a hood 3 days' ride south of her. She had been given to a Lannister and to a Bolton, and to a Bolton's bastard. She had been a queen in the north, at the end of the count, by the side of a man who had not been her brother for very long. She had not been a queen here. She had been a girl here, who had been polite to a boy who had wanted to kill her father. He had not, on the wall the other day, said the second thing he had said now. He had told her about Joffrey's temper and about her own door at his room. He had not, in those, said the second thing. The second thing he had said now had been, "You will not, in this house, be sold." He thought about her question. He looked at the wolf's wood. He chose his words. "You will not, in this house," he said, "be sold. Not to a Lannister, not to a Tyrell, not to a Targaryen when the time of the Targaryens comes, not to Stannis Baratheon, not to any of them. When you choose a man, you will choose him because you have looked at him a long time and you have, in your own house, with your own father and your own mother and your brothers, decided that he is a man you can stand beside. Not before, my mother. Your mother and your father, when I have said it to them, will say it to you. Have you said it to them, to your father? 2 nights ago he had said it to me first. I had said yes, to my mother, tomorrow. You have a great many tomorrows in your count. I do." She walked on. He walked on her right. They went along the wall a while, then she stopped again. She turned to him. She did not, this time, look at the wolfswood. She looked at his face. My brother, my lady. You are not the boy you were a moon ago. No, my lady. What changed in you? He looked at her. He had thought about the answer he would give her if she asked. He had thought about it on his bed in the dark when the candle had been out, in the count of the nights he had not slept. He had two answers ready. One was a true one. The other was a smaller one that was, in the count, true enough. He gave her the smaller one. A dream I cannot remember. She did not, at that, look away. She looked at him. Account. That is not very much, my brother. No, it is enough. It is enough. She did then the courtesy. He nodded. She walked on. He walked on her right until the corner of the wall. They came down off the wall at the south stair. Septa Mordane was at the bottom of the south stair with two of Sansa's maids, and Sansa walked across the yard with her Septa and her maids back into the keep, and she did not, in the walk back, look at him. He went the other way. At dusk Catelyn found him at the heart tree. He had not, that night, expected her. He had gone to the tree because it was a tree and because, in the count of the days, the tree was the place he had had to go. She came down the path with a wool cloak over her shoulders and her hair in a single plait at her back. She did not, at the edge of the clearing, stop. She came across the clearing to the pool. She stood beside him. She set her hand on the bark. She did not, at first, speak. The leaves of the heart tree did not move. A long count. Jon, my lady. Do not, this evening, my lady, me. He did not, at that, speak. I have said to my husband, she said, that I will in time be ready. I am not yet. I have not been able in these 8 days to be other than what I was. I want to say to you this evening the things I have not been able to say to you in 14 years. I want to say them. I will be able to say only some of them tonight. I will say more in time. I will say them as they come. My lady, you do not have to. I will speak. Yes. She did not take her hand off the bark. You are my husband's blood. I am. You are not my son. No, my lady. You have given me my children back. Bran. Arya. Sansa, who would have been gone to the Red Keep in a fortnight if you had not stood at the bottom of the wall the day she came down off it the first time. Robb, who has not yet ridden out of this gate for the south. Rickon, who would not, in the count, have known any of his brothers and sisters past the next winter. You have given them back to me. I am not, this evening, a woman who can find a way to say that to you except this. I will say it. She did not then weep. Catelyn Stark did not weep where any of her household could see her, and her household in the Godswood was a great old tree and a pool and a boy who would not, in the count, ever tell anyone what he had heard her say. She did not weep. She took her hand off the bark. She set it briefly on his cheek. She did not say his name. She did not need to. She took her hand off his cheek. Walk me back, she said, my lady. Walk me back, Jon. He walked her back. They went out of the Godswood by the inner gate of the Godswood. They walked across the yard. The torches were lit at the inner door. The household was at supper. The keep was the keep. At the door of the keep she stopped. Tomorrow, she said, tomorrow. You will sit at the high table at the noon meal, my lady. You will sit at the high table at the noon meal. Yes, my lady. She went in. He stood at the door. A count. He did not, in that count, say a word. He looked across the yard. Arya was at the corner of the kennel. She had been at the corner of the kennel since he had come out of the Godswood. She had not, at the corner of the kennel, said a word either. She had been holding the rope of one of the household hounds. She let the hound go. The hound went. She came across the yard. She stopped at the door. She looked at him. He looked at her. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow. She went in. He went in. On the road north of King's Landing in the 3rd hour of the same evening, a man on a small mountain horse stood in the trees above the King's Road and watched a column come up. The column was a column of Lannister men in red wool. There were 2 wagons in the column with bars on the windows. In the first wagon was a queen. In the second wagon were 3 children. At the head of the column rode a small lord on a Tully horse, who, by the look of him, had not been wearing his own clothes in some weeks. The man on the small mountain horse watched the column come up the road. He watched it pass. He did not, in the count of the passing, move. When the column had gone, he turned his horse out of the trees and rode the small mountain horse south at a walk for half a league, and then he stopped in the middle of the road. He did not, for a count, ride on. He took out from inside his coat a small piece of paper. He had written a thing on the paper an hour before in the bedroom of an inn 6 miles up the road. He had written it in a hand that was not his. He held the paper in his hand a count. He did, on the road, smile. It was the smile he kept ready. His eyes did not, in the count, share it. He folded the paper. He put the paper back inside his coat. He rode south. Chapter 9. End Chapter 10. The walls. The first snow of true winter came at the noon hour and stopped before supper. It had been a thin snow. The yard had not held it. The slate of the keep had held some of it on the north faces. The rampart had held more, in a thin band along the inner edge of the parapet, where the wind off the wolfswood would, in the next hour, take some of it back. She walked the rampart in the count of the 3rd bell after noon. She had a sword at her hip. The sword had a thin grip, wound in dark wool that Micken had taken from a remnant of Catelyn's that Catelyn had given him for the wrapping. The pommel had a small notch in it where Micken had pressed his thumb the night he had bent the steel. The blade was a long, thin blade, 4 fingers shorter than the small blades of the men of the household, 2 fingers longer than the practice swords of the boys of the yard. The blade had a sheath of plain brown leather that did not, when she walked, slap her hip. The sword was needle. She walked the rampart with needle at her hip. She did not, on the rampart, walk fast. Below her, in the yard, the keep was the keep. Ned was at the wooden ring. He had Rob at the ring, with a long sword in his hand, and a man named Hollies, who had ridden in from Long Lake on the morning of the day after the king had ridden out, with a list of 15 men of the smallholders Hollies was vouching for. Hollies was, in the count, a man Ned had not had at the wooden ring in any other autumn. Hollies was a man John had named at the supper table 4 nights gone. Hollies was a quiet man with a thin beard who had been, in another year, the master-at-arms of a keep that had been burned in a war that had not happened. Rob was not, at the ring, sparring. Rob was watching Hollies put 6 young men of the holdings through a drill. The drill was not a drill that the household had been using before. The drill was the drill of 2 lines closing on a wagon. The wagon was a piece of canvas over a low frame. The young men of the holdings did not, at first, understand the drill. Hollies was patient. Ned watched Hollies be patient. He nodded a count. Beyond the ring, the gallery of the small hall. Catelyn was on the gallery with the steward and the wife of the steward and 3 of her household, going through, with a piece of vellum, the count of the salt pork in the cellars under the great keep. The count of the salt pork was a count Catelyn had been going through for 4 mornings. The count had not, on the 3rd morning, been the count it ought to have been. It was not, on this morning, the count it ought to have been either. Catelyn was, at the gallery, making it the count it ought to have been. Hoder was in the small kitchen yard with Bran on his shoulder. Bran had not, that morning, asked for his pony. Bran had that morning walked the length of the gallery on his own feet from one bench to the next, holding a thin wooden staff Lewin had cut for him. He had walked 17 steps. He had sat down at the 17th step. He had said, "Tomorrow 18. Lewin had said, "Yes, my lord." He had not ridden Hoder's shoulder since the morning. He was in the kitchen yard riding Hoder's shoulder again. He had asked to. Hoder had said yes. Bran had said, "I will not in a moon be on your shoulder, Hoder." Hoder had said, "Hoder." Rickon was at the foot of Hoder with a stick. Rickon had a small black wolf at his foot. The wolf was the size of a kitten. The wolf had a black coat and one yellow eye and the other eye green. The wolf had a name. The wolf's name was Shagadog. Rickon had named him Shagadog the morning the litter had been brought up out of the wood 3 weeks before. ARYA had not had a wolf yet. Sansa had not had a wolf yet. Robb's wolf was a gray wolf, and the wolf's name was Grey Wind. JON had not had a wolf yet either, because the litter had come up with 5, by the household's count, and the household had not, in any of its counting, gone back into the wood to look for a 6th. ARYA had told JON that there had been a 6th, by the count of any wood in which there had been a litter at all. JON had told ARYA that they would, at the next moon, go up and look. ARYA had said yes. She watched the yard from the rampart. She watched her family in the yard. She did not, on the rampart, say a name. She walked the length of the rampart to the corner. She stopped at the corner. She turned. She set her hand on the parapet. She watched. He came up the rampart stair without sound. She did not look at him as he came. He stopped beside her. He set his hands on the parapet. He looked out at the wolf's wood. JON watched the wolf's wood from the parapet. The wood was a gray wood in this hour. The first snow had come down off the high pines a count ago, and had laid a thin gray along the underside of the trees. And the snow at the edge of the wood had taken on the color the wood took on in autumn, when the leaves had gone from the alder and the birch, but the leaves had not yet gone from the rowan along the wood's edge. The rowan was a small red along the edge in the gray afternoon. The high pines were dark. He did not say anything for a count, neither did she. The keep was below them. The household was below them. The keep was a keep that had, in the count of the days since the king had ridden out, the count of a keep that had finished a thing. He looked at the sword at her hip. Micken. 3 nights ago. He did it well. He did. He grumbled. He said it was too thin to chop a turnip with. He gave me a bit of beeswax for the sheath. He gave me a stone. You did not need the stone. I took it. Yes. They were quiet a count. The wind came up from the wolf's wood. The wind moved the snow on the inner edge of the parapet. The snow lifted a finger's breadth and laid itself down again. Ravens, she said, 4. Out yesterday, out yesterday. Where? 1 to Eastwatch, 1 to the citadel by a small note in a hand that is not the Meister's. 1 to a man at the Eyrie who is, at the next noon, going to do a small thing the lady of the Eyrie will not like. 1 to a steward at Dragonstone. By a hand he will not know. By a hand he will not know. And the others. 2 of the 4 ravens our queen sent did not arrive at any of the places she had sent them. The other 2 went to my father and to my uncle Kevin. My father will not, this winter, ride north. My uncle Kevin will sit at his desk in his keep and write to his brother, and his brother will not write back for a moon. We have a moon. The Tyroshi in the cellar has named the kennel master's brother in White Harbor. That is a man I would like to speak to. You will when we send our man for the pitch. All right, Dragonglass, 40 barrels coming. The first wagon will be on the King's Road in a fortnight. Yes, Sellers, under the broken tower. We are emptying the broken tower. Catelyn does not yet know what for. She will be told tomorrow at the noon meal by you with me. All right. The wind came up again. Tyrion, she said. In King's Landing tomorrow. He will write to you. He will write to my father. To you also. To me also, by a different rider. The letter to my father will say what a hand says to his lord. The letter to me will say what a friend writes to a friend. That is a thing you did not have last time. Yes, it is. Robert has not in 3 days drunk. How do you know? Tyrion's man on the King's Road. He will drink again. He will. He will not this winter drink as he was drinking last summer. Why not? Because the man he was drinking against is no longer in his bed. Yes, a long count, Sansa, she said, asleep, at the 3rd hour by her bed with Lady at her foot. Yes. Lady is the size of a small dog. She is. She will not this year be killed on a riverbank for the bite of another wolf that did not bite a Lannister boy. No, Because there is no Lannister boy at the riverbank. No. Because Sansa has not ridden south. No. Bran walks tomorrow. Walks today. He took 17 steps. He will take 18 tomorrow. He will. He dreams on purpose. He does. In the dreams he has been a wolf and a raven and once a man in a tree, he told you. He told me last night in the gallery. He told Luwin this morning. Luwin asked him 3 small questions and put down the answers. Luwin is writing a book. What book? The book the Citadel has not written in 9 generations. Yes, Mother. He did not at the word look at her. He looked at the wolfswood. She said it again. Mother. Yes. Said your name at the noon meal. She did. In front of Septa Mordane, in front of all of them. What did Septa Mordane do? She said, yes, my lady. Did Mother say anything else? She passed me the salt. That is a great thing, my brother. It is. A long quiet. The first stars were not yet out. The sky was on the wolfswood side of the rampart, the color of old slate. She set her hand on the parapet beside his. She did not, in the count, put her hand on his. She set it half a finger's breadth from his. Deaneries, she said. Read the letter 4 nights ago. Has not yet ridden out with the horse lord. Will not, in the count, ride out with the horse lord. Has the eggs in a trunk under a bed. Will, in 3 moons, take the eggs out of the trunk. Will, in 6 moons, do a thing in a tent on a hill that will make the eggs not be eggs. You did not name yourself in the letter. Not yet. When? In a year, when she has the dragons, when she has crossed the sand. When she is a thing the realm cannot, in any of the books of the Citadel, ignore. We will, in a year, write a second letter. The second letter will name me. She will not believe it. She will believe it because, in the year between the 2 letters, the first letter will have done a great many things for her, and the second letter will do them too. She will believe it because she will, in the year, have not been a girl in a tent anymore, and she will know what a small thing belief is. You will go to her. Not yet. When the wall has fallen. It will fall. It will. We will not have stopped that. We will have, between now and then, made it not the end of the realm. All right. The wind moved. Account. Petter Baelish, she said. Yes. He was on the road last night north of King's Landing watching our Queen's wagon go by. He was. You had a man on the same road. I did. He saw the smile. He did. Tyrion knows. Tyrion knows. Tyrion will, before he sleeps in the Tower of the Hand his second night in the city, have set 3 men on Petter Baelish who Petter Baelish will not, until he is in a small dark room with a maester, no were ever set on him at all. He will not put a knife in him. No. Why? Because we want of Petter Baelish the names that are in his head and not the man himself. Tyrion will get the names. The man we will let be, not yet, for account of moons, after the names we will see, all right. Another count. The cold, she said. He did not look at her. He looked at the wolfswood. He looked, beyond the wolfswood, at the line of the high pines, which was a line that ran north until the line was a line that ran into a place a man could not see from this rampart, and could see only from a wall a long way north of where they stood. Every night, he said. Me too. She did not, at saying it, look at him. She looked at the wolfswood. They stood at the parapet account. She let her hand stay where it was. He let his stay where it was. The wind moved a thin finger of snow off the parapet between them. He thought, in the count, about the morning he had opened his eyes in his old room. He thought about a candle on a chest, lit by a hand that had loved him. He thought about the bark of a tree. He thought about a small girl in a hall who had thrown a bone spoon at her sister with the rotation of a knife in the wrist. He thought about his father's hand on his shoulder. He thought about a queen in a wagon going south with her hair plain and her face turned to the wall of the wagon. He thought about his small brother in the kitchen yard on the shoulder of a man who would not, in this turn, die in a thing that should not have eaten him. He thought about his sister of 11 years who would not, in this turn, be beaten in a garden by the flat of a queen's sword. He thought about another sister across a sea who had 3 things in a trunk that were not, by the count of any book of the Citadel, going to be in the trunk much longer. He thought about a wall. He thought about a thing beyond a wall. He thought about the cold. The cold was the cold. The cold was a thing he had been ready for since the morning he had opened his eyes. The cold did not, in the count, frighten him. He had been the cold, and he had been killed by the cold, and the cold had not, in the end, kept him. He thought about the count of his 11 days. The count of his 11 days was no longer a count he had to keep. The days had begun again. He took his hand off the parapet. He set it on the parapet beside hers. He did not, in that, look at her. She did not, in that, look at him. The wind off the wolfswood was a small wind. The high pines were dark. The dark went a great long way north.